Get started.
Okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. If we could all please rise. Pastor Travis Seidel with the Spring Church will lead us in prayer this evening. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. If you'd all bow your heads with me this evening. Dear Lord, we thank you for everyone that has gathered in this room tonight. We pray for the mayor, for the city officials, and for everyone else here today. And we pray that you would guide their hearts and guide their minds and give everyone wisdom with the decisions that are to be made this evening. And we pray that that wisdom that you have would just be poured out on the people this evening. And we thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of your city and for the opportunity for the decisions that will be made. And we pray that you would give everyone strength this evening as we build a community that glorifies you. And we pray this in the name of our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Councilman DeWitt, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Be an honor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba. Here. Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We've got a nice crowd here. Come on in if anybody out in the hallway wants to come in. We're going to have public comment at this time on agenda items. Members of the public that would like to speak on agenda items only, please come forward.
Okay.
Welcome, Rick.
Yes, Rick Steinmeier. Welcome, City Council and the Mayor. I like your haircut.
Thank you.
Nice and cool, isn't it? Yeah.
And for the record, I didn't lose a bet. We did this for the Golisano Children's Hospital last
Very
week.
good. I'm glad to hear that. Very good. Off the record a little bit, here, my friend and our neighbor, Floyd Wright, has passed away at 95 years old. He's 34 years active with the Lions Club. He's a retired colonel. He dropped out of high school at 16 and went and fought in World War II. And then he got called up and fought in Korea. But he passed away, and his service will be tomorrow at 1 o'clock at Chickani's.
Great.
I'd like to honor Rhonda Lyles Lawhon and her father and mother. Lyles have been in town since 1896. And Lawhon's probably in 1920 or so. We have 4 mayors of survey here, me being one. Rhonda replaced me at the helm of the Historical Society. And thank you for your service, Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Welcome, John.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, for the record, my name is John Pano. I'm the president of the Bonita Springs Downtown Alliance, CEO of CGT Kayaks, and a Bonita Spring resident. I'd like to speak on item 9A in support of a study to assess the flow and salinity of our waters. In support of that, I'd also like to speak on item 10 and ask the council to please not change multiple use, intensity, or density in our codes at this time, especially since we're working on a form-based code that would probably just kind of make that obsolete in the end anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Kathy, good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Kathy McGrath. And I will just echo what John Pano just said about changing the zoning. You know, they're working very hard, and we're seeing the results of the fruits of everyone's encouragement. So at this time, please don't change that. And also, of course, all the recipients of the proclamations, I'd like to congratulate, and especially, drawing a blank, Linda. The Lyles family has been a mainstay of Bonita for many, 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 many years, and I've known her for a while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public? Good evening, Bill.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Bill Simons, United States Navy and Air Force veteran. Thank you for the proclamation today, Mayor, declaring October 13th as the United States birthday in Bonita Springs. I want everyone to know all Navy veterans and open to the public are welcome to the celebration of the Navy birthday. Next Saturday, October 13th, at the Bonita Springs VFW off of K9 Drive by the racetrack. And the cake cutting ceremony, we will be bringing the cake ceremony, and we'll have 4 raffles, music, and Italian dinner. So go Navy, you are all invited. And my friend, Navy veteran, Dan, would like to say something.
Welcome.
Welcome. Mayor, City Council, for the record, my name is Dan Thompson. I'm the past commander of Post 4254 here in Bonita Springs and several other veterans organizations here in town. The United States Navy originated over 240 years ago as a Continental Navy. The then Continental Congress authorized 2 armed vessels to search for ships supplying the British Army with weapons and ammunition during the American Revolution. When the war ended, the Continental Navy was dismantled. But pirate threats to American merchant shipping led President George Washington to establish the Naval Act of 1794, creating a permanent standing U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy today is the naval warfare branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. It has more than 300,000 personnel on active duty and around 100,000 personnel in the Navy Reserve, proudly protecting our way of life. I'd like to close by saying, go Navy, beat Army.
Thank you. Yes.
One little comment. I would like to clarify the ceremony starts at 4 o'clock next Saturday. Also, I would like to have Lieutenant Matt Feeney do the proclamation of the United States Navy next Saturday at 4 o'clock at the ceremony.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. A Notre Dame guy, I might add, too, Bill, by the way, but welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Council. My name's Danville Ledbetter, for the record. I'm with London Bay Homes. A couple things, the reason why I'm before you today. One is we went ahead and notified the neighborhood that we are going to go ahead and hold a neighborhood meeting, rather, on the 18th of September for the rezone of the former Weeks Fish Camp site. So that's one thing that I'm up here just to go ahead and just reiterate. 2 is I want to speak on item number 10 that you have before you today. I think there's a couple others that have spoke on it as well. I think there's two things that are going on, and I think I'm going to just echo basically Tony Manzillo's comments from last meeting. Basically, you have an ongoing study right now that I think the taxpayers deserve the right to go ahead and hear what the findings of those are before you guys make any decision relative to density, intensity, and deviation changes to the code. As well, I think, just in general, I think it's important that the council itself have the ability to be able to make those types of decisions rather than fortifying them inside a code. Market conditions change. You need to have the ability to be able to decipher those market conditions and make the proper decisions at the time that the applicant comes before you. So really, that's why I'm up here today. So I just wanted to give you those 2 comments. That's all I have.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might just add, anyone else who wishes to speak on any of the items under the second reading ordinances, item 10 on the agenda, you'll have another opportunity to get those comments on the record during the public hearing.
Great. Thank you very much.
May I apologize, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
To Rhonda. Laura will tell you, when I can't think of a name, I call everybody Linda, right? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Linda Lou. Okay. Welcome.
Hello, Council. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations on your new haircut.
My hair looks pretty long compared to yours,
Yeah, I
doesn't
know it. I wish I had that. I'm going to make this short. You just heard Dan Ledbetter? Ditto. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Councilman Grant, are you coming up? Okay, great. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Alex Grant, 11851 East Starry Street. What I'm talking about is 13D. I saw in the paper the diagram of the residential area adjacent to the river here for the bamboo property. And as I reiterated before, we do have a flooding issue on the Imperial River. If you remember Irma last year, we had about 150 feet in either direction of water going from that river, and that was just from going from east to west on the Imperial River. If we had a storm surge from the Gulf, we would have had more water going from west to east, not only east to west. And I believe that's what happened during Hurricane Donna, and that really flooded that area. So my recommendation is not to think of this Imperial River like this is in San Antonio, Texas, or something like that. We are very close to the bay and water Gulf on this side, on the west side, and we have flooding issue on the east side, and that river is narrow. And I am very concerned of a liability issue to the city, taxpayers in the city of Bonita Springs, if a developer builds in that area and we know about the river flooding in that area. What are the possibilities of the city being sued if something happens in that area due to flooding and the developer decides to go bankrupt or go out and leaves us with the damage? And then we have some big law firm like Morgan & Morgan going to sue the pants out of the city of Bonita Springs because we knew about the flooding on that river. So I would recommend at least 150-foot promenade on both sides of that river to prevent a potential lawsuit for the city residents here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we have Mayor Kevin Ruane from Sanibel with us this evening, and he's going to speak with us. Kevin, come on up, please.
Good
Welcome.
evening. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, city attorney, city manager, Madam Clerk. Kevin Ruane for the record, Mayor Sanibel. I'm also the President-elect of Florida League of Mayors, and I also have a title called the West Coast Representative to the Florida Ecosystem, South Florida Ecosystem Task Force. Tonight I come before you to talk about a minimum flow issue, and more importantly, a ruling that took place at September 13th at the Water Management District. Said ruling was a public hearing. It had 3 months of comments where we had an opportunity to give our technical comments. We did so throughout the process. The issue at hand, honestly, is the minimum flow actually is a requirement during the dry season. Believe it or not, we need more water during the dry season. The flow that they recommended was to take it from 300 CFS to 400 CFS, even though last year we had 89 days of violations when we were receiving 650 CFS. So I didn't necessarily understand the rationale behind it. All the mayors came together. We were very supportive of initiative to object to their saying. 4 of us went over to the meeting and actually spoke on our behalf, and about a dozen citizens went. different prominent people. The most prominent person from Sanibel was Richard Johnson, who was Bailey's grocery store, open 200 years. To indicate that the economic impact that obviously the water conditions have had, his establishment lost $500,000 just in the month of August. So what we were looking for was obviously for them to delay this ruling, because actually taking something from 300 to 400 when 650 wasn't enough, obviously didn't make a lot of sense. And after 10 or 11 people that made comments, 4 elected officials, they basically went through and 9-0 decided to pass this rule. With that in mind, there's only really 2 things you can do. You can call up and ask them to appeal it, but that isn't necessarily something that's going to take place. We decided to write a letter and ask them to appeal it. Our letter went ignored. We had 10 days from the 13th of September to file a petition. So we basically decided to do so. Fortunately, there were 3 city councils that had meetings, Sanibel being one, Fort Myers Beach being the second, and Cape Coral being the third. Okay, so the 3 of us filed as what's known as co-petitioners. The 3 of us actually filed an action objecting to it with science information. I believe you received a copy of the petition. If you need any, I have. 30 pages with scientific information objecting to it. Thereafter, there is an opportunity for other parties to become engaged. It's called an intervener. Okay, so I'm happy to say that Fort Myers and Estero this morning joined on the cause to be an intervener. So tonight I ask you 2 things. One, we went through a process of sending the letter. You obviously did so. I wanted to make sure it was ratified by this council. But 2, what my request is the request is for other municipality parties to participate in a potential interest in joining the proceedings initiated by our petition under section 120.562A Florida statute, which states other substantially affected parties may join the proceedings as interveners on appropriate terms which shall not delay any of the proceedings. Basically what we're looking to be is one united body. Okay, so right now there's 5 cities. You would be the 6th if so you do that. And we're going to look to Lee County Commissioners. The date's already been determined. It's October 29th and October 30th. So it's not going to be this long drawn-out court proceeding. It's before the Office of Administrative Services within the state of Florida. Our hope, honestly, is to try to have as many people as humanly possible to be engaged in this, to try to prevent them from actually just laying the court date. We want to sit down and look at the science. The difference between our science and their science is they did a modeling situation, a hypothetical situation, where we actually did real-life data. And since they acknowledged the fact that we had 89 days of violations at 650 CFS, how do you pass a rule with 400? The more important issue that I think most people need to understand, we can probably take as much as 1,000 CFS during the dry season. We actually need the fresh water to actually reduce the salinity. We needed 10 parts, 10 practical parts. And that's really what we need to get to. If they had done that this dry season, we could have received 50% less releases during the wet season. So here's a simple process with 0 cost dollars. Lower the lake, give us exactly what we want to help our estuaries during the dry season, and it allows you an opportunity to put more water in the lake. Additionally, lowering the lake during the dry season actually helps the ecology of the lake. There's actually filter marshes, there's things to actually improve and reduce the nutrients. So you, A, help our estuaries during the dry season. B, you actually improve the ecology of the lake. And C, you prepare yourself in a better situation for wet season. So that's basically the situation. Tonight I'm before you to ask Bonita to be an intervener with us. The intent is to actually be all 7 people to divide this cost equally amongst everybody. All the documents have been filed. All the experts have been determined. So unless you have some scientific person that has any background that wants to be an expert witness, we've kind of determined who we'd like to bring before them.
Yeah.
There's 2 other things that we actually have that are interesting. Yesterday I received a call from Congressman Mass. He said he'd like to get involved in this. The East Coast obviously would like us to receive more water during the dry season. They obviously are collateral damage during the wet season. Okay, so I've talked to many mayors on the East Coast, obviously as my position as the incoming president-elect of the Florida League of Mayors, and many are going to be supportive. Tonight I had the privilege of actually talking to your son, Councilwoman Carr. Nick and I had a conversation because I reached out to Corey, their legislative affairs person, to see if Congressman Rooney would actually be involved. We're not looking to go to court. We're just looking to have a sit-down conversation to say, okay, here's our real-life science, and here's what we have. Here's your modeling situation. I've been doing this for 12 years. 7 of the 8 years have been low-flow issues where they've gotten it wrong. We've actually begged for water during the dry season. In the 4 other seasons, we had actually high-flow issues. There's only been 1 year of 12 that they've actually gotten this right. The other ask as we go through and update LORS, which is Lake Okeechobee Release Schedule, we'd like actually the Water Management District, the Army Corps, and the DEP to work collectively 365 days a year. You know, LORS is actually a situation where we have a dry season, and the Water Management District actually is responsible for managing the lake. And then it gets to a wet season, and then we have to deal with the Army Corps of Engineers. So it's like a football that you actually pass back and forth. But the football, the collateral damage is our estuaries. It's our local economy, it's tourism, it's the effect on real estate, and the trickle-down effect. Okay, and obviously those things are really crucial to our well-being and your well-being. And last year, our real estate values, if you looked at them from year over year, went down from 6.5% to 3%. There wasn't a city that I'm aware of, maybe your city was in the minority, where if you looked at 2 years ago's values when they increased, and last year, nobody achieved the same. And you look at it and you say, stock market's at all-time highs, certainly seems like the economy's growing at a GDP at almost 4%. Why would that be? You know, so the water conditions, as they continue to repeat itself, 16 high releases, 17 high releases, 18 high releases, are going to have an adverse effect on real estate prices. They might be doing that, and I'm afraid of looking at what the values will be at the end of this year, because obviously that's how we collect our millage, you know, our rates, most of our tax dollars. The millage rate we have to impose is really just a combination of our tax values and a millage rate. I mean, that's really what we get stuck with. So these have an economic impact. That's my ask this evening, to you to join 5 other cities, and we'll be going to the county commissioners a week from Tuesday, and I'm going to ask all the mayors to come with us. I don't think there'll be any pushback from them. I've talked to several commissioners and certainly understand our ask. But that's my ask this evening.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Derek, do you have any thoughts before we open this up for questions? Or
No, I've reviewed all the petitions. I've spoken with the other city attorneys in Lee County. I think that we would fit the bill to meet the requirements for standing in this case if we were to join the lawsuit, but the decision has to be made very soon because there is a window that closes prior to the hearing dates that had already been given. I believe it's 20 days out. If we don't intervene by then, we won't be able to intervene.
okay, Fred, I know you had a question.
Well, no, I was going to go ahead and make a motion that we do it.
Council, Council, are there other questions? Amy?
Second for discussion.
Yeah, okay. There's been a motion and a second discussion.
I just some clarifications, because you said that the rule was changed from 300 to 400, and so the current rule is 300, or the previous rule is 300, but then you said that you were getting 650.
Correct. So basically
How
what...
did that, so they exceeded their rule? Is that what you're saying?
So the rule is actually minimum flow, so they don't have to, obviously, that's what they have to give us at least, so the rule would be 400. The way we actually received the 650, the 250 that we received was the East Coast water, because they never want water during the dry season. They don't have a desire, they don't have any salinity issues. If you look at the way Lake Okeechobee is, the release actually that goes to the East Coast, it's about a quarter of a mile. Our release is actually 70 miles long. So we have salinity issues. So the 250 that we actually received was their 250. We actually received 400. But we were still with the 650, still in violation 89 days.
In salinity, you're talking about?
Salinity, all right.
Okay.
So it's actually what's
Yeah.
known as 10 PSU, or 10 practical salinity units. That's what you try to get to, or lower. So we'll take actually more than 650. I'll take as much as 1,000, because what you have to realize is 2 things. One, we need to get to that target 10 PSU. And all that does is actually correct the situation. And we want to rebalance the estuaries. We'll actually take 800 to 1,000 CFS. And that actually gives us a higher amount. It gives us an opportunity for the estuaries to actually rebalance. And like anything else, you'd like to cure it yourself. It's like when you get a cut, if you keep it open, air actually heals the cut. Same exact thing with the estuaries. They'll actually improve with the fresh water by reducing the salinity.
Peter, did you have a question?
Yeah, just 1 or 2 things. Kevin, as always, thanks for all your hard work on this.
two little detail things. I've heard you've said to others the estimate is $5,000 or something like that. Is that correct? Yeah, I mean, I actually think there'll be no cost greater than $5,000 to any one city. Right. Okay. You know? So I mean, what's interesting about this case is you're before an administrative person. Right. This isn't depositions. This is just here's your scientist, here's our scientist. What we're trying to do, and actually our request will still be up to the date, is to delay this. The good news is the DEP, when we're in the middle of the situation, approved 6 more monitoring devices. So not only do we have real life data, but we'll have 6 more devices to give us even more accurate data than we actually have. Right. So that was our request when we went there. We didn't ask them to act on this. All we asked them to do is to delay. Let's put the monitors in place, and that's still my ask. Right. But now I have 2 congressmen that might actually intervene, and maybe some people might look at the insanity of doing the same thing year after year and actually change the costs. Right. Then the other thing is, this is not a lawsuit. This is an administrative proceeding. Well, I mean, technically it's a petition, so yes, it's
in
not
an administrative
in an administrative way.
It's
a petition.
I'm
correct.
supportive of it.
Yeah, no, and Congressman Mast, probably not that much of a detail, but represents a Stewart area, right? Up in it's kind of a coastal district there, similar to Rooney's, but on the East Coast.
So it's Stewart, it's Sewell's Point, it's Martin County.
Right.
It's Indiantown, it's Jupiter Island, Port St. Lucie. So, I mean, they're on the Treasure Coast, as it's called.
Right.
They get quick releases because it's such a short run.
Right, right.
They don't have an opportunity for their water. But he reached out to me yesterday and said, how can I help? I mean, it's amazing how our voices are actually getting heard in the congressman. And he realizes that he'll benefit, his community will benefit. We take more water during the dry season. They take less water during the wet season.
Right.
And the best part, it costs $0.00, and it could be implemented right away. I don't have to wait for a project that's going to take 5 or 10 years.
$0, 0 cents,
0
but
cents.
common sense, maybe. All right, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Yeah, Greg.
Just had a couple questions for Kevin.
Sure,
Thanks
absolutely.
again. Thanks a lot for all the legwork you've been
My
doing this
pleasure.
for ever since I've been on council. So thank you very much for that. 2 questions. One, you've said that we got state or U.S. congressmen and everybody involved in this. What about our state representatives? On both sides, you know, we've got 4 or 5 of them that we look to around here.
Actually, what we've done, and they're all aware of it, so I wrote to the governor, and I wrote to the DEP. Okay, the governor is actually responsible for the water management district. Okay. The timing of this is just a little unusual because, unfortunately, the governor's running for Senate.
Right.
And unfortunately, in 37 days, we'll have a new governor. So it's a really unusual period of time. And quite frankly, the executive director that I'm dealing with right now, the water management district, may not be the executive director. Now, on October 29th, he will be. But obviously, generally, when there's a new governor, there's a new executive director. So we have notified our local delegation. I don't know exactly what role they can play with the water management district. You know, where Congress is a little bit different is they're responsible theoretically through the Department of Interior. Okay, they're Army Corps. So they at least have a say in the way the lake is managed. So that was really it. And both representatives, it was really their intuition to do so. It's unprecedented for federal, you know, congressmen to actually get involved in this.
No.
But
Yeah, I know that, and that's
it's there.
great. My second ask is would it benefit for all of us to show up on the 29th and 30th, to have people there in the audience, whether it's the mayor, myself, anyone of the city council, or is it, you know?
You know what, the game plan will be, to answer your question, yes, the game plan from now until then is to put as much pressure as humanly possible, because I could tell everyone, I'm not looking to do this on October 29th. What I'm looking to do is have them call to pull their action back and say, you know what, let's sit back at the table. It's really what I'm looking for them to do. But if not, I'm prepared, and so are all the other cities, and we'll go there and as one united voice, because what's involved here is your town, your businesses, your real estate, your citizens, in every single town within Lee County. Because whether it's my beach that they want to come and visit, they're living in Europe. I was in Estero this morning. A gentleman got up and said, 2 years ago I came here, and I always go to Fort Myers Beach in Sanibel. I came here 2 years ago. If I knew what I knew today, I wouldn't have purchased my house. That's the economic impact we're never going to be able to rebound from. And this is a policy decision. I can't emphasize enough. We make policy decisions every day of our lives. It has zero cost to it. I don't understand it at all.
So, did you show up or not?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And Kevin, you'll get us all the details, or Arlene, or somebody, we'll get all the details, and we'll obviously get those out, so.
Absolutely.
Further discussion, Council? There's been a motion to accept, and a second. Is there further discussion? Great. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
I can't thank you enough. I will certainly make sure your mayor has all the details. In 2 weeks from Tuesday just passed, we'll be before the Board of County Commissioners, obviously asking them to join as a co-petitioner as well. I've talked to most of the commissioners. I'll give you all the details, and I certainly want not only all the council members, but your citizens being engaged as well. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
I wonder if we could ratify the letter while Kevin's here as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I
Motion
move-
to approve?
Yes, motion to ratify.
And second?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
And just for the citizens out there, that's a letter that I've already sent, so it's one of these things that you do in good faith, and we just ratified the letter that was sent a few weeks ago, so.
I appreciate all
changed my
all your
Yeah, I appreciate
support.
that.
I appreciate all your support. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
I'll have to say one last thing. Go Yankees.
Oh, buddy, I was going to ask your thoughts on tonight's wild card game, but okay, fantastic. Okay, thanks so much, Kevin. Mayor Ruane. Okay, we're moving on now to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve in a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Great, we're going to move on to proclamations and presentations, and if I could have another New York Yankees fan, please join us at the front of the room. Francis Cuomo. I'm sorry, up here.
Oh, okay.
Does she want to come up? Huh?
Come on.
How are you? What happened?
Oh, she won.
She won. Okay. Do you want to join us? Do you wanna
Yes.
come up?
Come on.
Okay.
Somebody.
Yeah, they will.
Thanks. I don't think it's the mayor and
Yeah, you can do that too. I'm doing well. Doing well. It's for the Dallas Red Sox. Good evening, everybody. On behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of recognition proudly presented to Francis Cuomo, owner of DeRomo's Gourmet Market and Restaurant, in recognition of earning a top spot on Open Table's list of 100 best al fresco restaurants in America for 2018, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, October 3rd, 2018. Congratulations, my man.
Thank you.
I'd like to say a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Mayor, council. Actually, there's two contributing factors to this award, and one of them is our patrons. You know, not only the locals, but the ones that come seasonally. So we're blessed to have them too. But mainly is the employees. I give it all to them. They do a great job, consistent, hardworking, and without them, we don't have anything. So I give them the credit as well. So, but it's a great town. 5 years ago, maybe more, I was here, met with fire marshals, police department, councilmen, came in with a set of blueprints, said, here I am, we're going to open a market. They approved, I wanted to get their blessings, and we did, and 4 years, October 15th. So, but it's a blessing, and I'm very grateful for Bonita Springs and all the patrons. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Would you like to say a few words? You okay? Okay, and you got one bad paw there, but I'll let you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You got a bad paw, and I got a haircut, so.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate
All right, go Red Sox.
it. Yeah, go Yankees.
All right. Could we please have Wanda?
Hey, thank you.
Wanda, come up, please. Welcome. How are you? On behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, this is a certificate of appreciation presented to Rhonda Lahan in recognition of your 9 years of dedicated service to the City of Bonita Springs as a member of the Historic Preservation Board. Your experience and comprehensive knowledge of the history of our city has been invaluable to our community. 2009 to 2018, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, October 3rd, 2018. You know, those are my dates, too. I got here in 2009. So congratulations to everything you've done, and thank you. You're going to be missed, but I know you will certainly not be forgotten.
Thank you. I'm really honored. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to serve with my fellow board members, and it's been an honor to have the city staff that we work with for so long, and council. I think you're our current liaison and past liaison. So it's been a privilege. Thank you. And I love Doromos.
Thank you so much. We'll just do a picture over here.
Mayor, Dallas Rivard, the chairman, is here as well, and he wanted to especially thank Rhonda, too.
Absolutely. There's other members of the board here as well. If anybody would like to speak, get emotional, you know.
Rhonda, as the chairman of the board, I want to thank you so much for your service. It's been a pleasure being on the board with you. You're invaluable to the board. I have your cell phone number. I will be calling you. I still expect you to write little things about the photographs that we talked about. So you're not getting off the hook that easy. So thank you, Rhonda. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rhonda, for all your years. I don't think people know how long Rhonda's been involved with historic preservation. She started out with the Historical Society, and she was the president there, and then also a mayor of Survey, and then, of course, with the Historic Preservation Board, so we appreciate that. And also, if you watch our videos, you can hear her some, and then also, as Dallas mentioned, all the things that she wrote about the different buildings and like that, so we really appreciate that.
Yes, Rhonda, you'll be missed by all of us, especially with your great written performance and also corrections to our minutes, which you've been very persistent on.
And if I could have Bill Simons come up, please. This is a proclamation from the City of Bonita Springs, whereas on October 13th, 1775, the First Continental Congress authorized the first American naval force in an effort to curb British sea control. And whereas when the infant navy was formed, it consisted of just 2 armed vessels tasked with disrupting British ships supplying the British Army in America. And whereas over the past nearly 2½ centuries, our United States Navy has been forged by the sea to become the largest, most advanced, and most lethal fighting force the world has ever known. And whereas in 1972, Admiral Elmo Zumwalt designated October 13th as the U.S. Navy's official birthday and directed that it be commemorated to enhance appreciation of our Navy heritage and to reinforce pride and professionalism and the United States Navy service. Whereas, on behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, it is my pleasure to proclaim October 13th, 2018 as a special day to show appreciation for all United States Navy personnel and Navy veterans, and encourage all citizens to celebrate the observance of the 243rd birthday of the United States Navy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Peter Simmons, Mayor of Bonita Springs, Florida, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 13th as the United States Navy birthday in the City of Bonita Springs, in witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Bonita Springs this 3rd day of October, A.D. 2018, signed Mayor Peter Simmons, October 3rd, 2018. Bill, would you like to say a few words?
I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the council for recognizing the Navy birthday, 243 years old. And I want to thank Lieutenant Matt Feeney. He's going to be doing the proclamation, reading it at VFW next Saturday. So go Navy. Everybody's welcome to the celebration.
Thank you, Bill. Take two pictures. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bill. Okay. Could we have the folks with Lee County Drug-Free Kids, please, come forward?
Yeah.
Welcome. How are you? Thank you. Nice to see you. Hello. Welcome. How are you? Okay, this is a proclamation on behalf of the City of Bonita Springs, National Red Ribbon Week and Lee County Drug-Free Kids, October 23rd to 30th, 2018. Whereas alcohol use by Lee County teens has increased 21.4% in the past 10 years, and whereas tobacco use by Lee County teens has decreased 17.2% in the past 10 years, and whereas use of prescription pain relievers has decreased 7.1% in the past 10 years, and whereas this shows that the Lee County students are making good choices about alcohol and drugs, and that their parents are talking to them about alcohol and drugs, and whereas for every dollar spent on prevention, $7 are saved in treatment, according to the United States government surveys, and whereas families in Lee County show an extraordinary commitment to prevention and the health and wellness of their children, as demonstrated by their participation in prevention programs like Red Ribbon Week and Drug House Odyssey, and whereas hundreds of Lee County students participate in Red Ribbon Week events in their schools led by extraordinary teachers and principals, and whereas this year's theme of Red Ribbon Week is Life is Your Journey, Travel Drug-Free, and whereas the Lee County Coalition for Drug-Free Southwest Florida and the School District of Lee County will celebrate National Red Ribbon Week on October 18th, 2018 at a ceremony honoring Lee County's drug-free kids. And now, therefore, I, Peter Simmons, Mayor of the City of Bonita Springs, proclaim October 23rd through 31st, 2018 as Red Ribbon Week. Signed, Mayor Peter Simmons, October 3rd, 2018. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that as a coalition, I've been the chair there for 6 years now, and we're excited to be expanding our outreach into Bonita Springs, and we're starting our first SAD club here with the Boys and Girls Club, so we're excited about that, having the outreach into Bonita Springs, and we are doing our Busey Bank Run for Prevention this Saturday at Centennial Park in Fort Myers, which all those proceeds go to starting SAD clubs like this, which we self-fund to put on in all these cities.
Some words to share? Okay. Here, you want to hold that? Thank you very much. And you know what? There might be a couple of typos. Not that I want that. Definitely want typos on that. Okay. We are now going to move on to mayor and council member items. I'm sorry, skipping along here. Proclamations and presentation. Oh, yeah. Look at that, Margaret Wordsley. Hello there. You were down there at the bottom of the page. I missed you. Sorry about that. How are you? Good. Welcome. Arlene, you want to tee this up?
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in November of 2017, the Council engaged the services of the Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council to assist in a study regarding affordable, attainable housing. We are here, you just received a copy of the study recently. This is an introduction to that study and an overview presented by Ms. Margaret Wurselt this evening. We would at a later date be looking for any further next steps.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
Nice to
Thank
see you again.
For the record, Margaret Worsley, Southwest Florida Regional Planning Council. Just to go over what the assignment was, I was asked to meet with all of you and get input from the council on their thoughts on what is needed and what they'd like to see happen as far as affordable housing is concerned. I was also asked to meet with stakeholders, residents, businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, and different groups to get their input. If you look on, you all have the report. It was sent to you. Appendix A lists all the meetings that I had with people during this time. And then Appendix B has comments that I received from the different groups. But some people would prefer not to have their name linked to the comments, so that's why they're separated from the stakeholders list. So it's just a list of all the comments received. Based on that, I met with most of you a couple of times to go over what your concerns or if there were any issues that were just off the table that we didn't want to consider. And I believe that there was consensus on two issues. That we did not want development in the DRGR, and that we weren't really interested in creating a housing authority to do the affordable housing here. Besides that, everybody seemed very open to new ideas and was there and said that they would consider the issues. You know, they're not saying yes to anything, but they would consider further research into that. So at this point, I have not met with your special counsel because I was asked not to until you make some decisions on what directions you want to go. And then that may be a more appropriate time to meet with your land use attorney to discuss these options. But I'm coming back to you now with the report. So in defining this problem, I think we have to look at what the housing cost burden is. So pretty much it is accepted that housing cost burden equals the rent, or mortgage, utilities, taxes, insurance, transportation, and potentially homeowner association fees. The United States government defines affordable to be housing costs that are at 30% or below 30% of one's annual income. It goes on to say that low-income families are considered to be to have an annual income that does not exceed 80% of the area median income. The area median income for Bonita Springs is $58,415. So if you take 80% of that, you're talking about an annual income of $46,700 to be considered low income. They have other classifications too. So you see that 35% is considered extremely low. And what I tried to do is list some of the categories of workers that would fall into these definitions. So under extremely low, which would be about $20,000 a year, you have service workers such as maids, housekeeping, concierge. Under very low, which is 50% of the area median income, or $29,208, you have medical assistants, EMTs, paramedics, teaching assistants, massage therapists, dental assistants, secretaries, and administrative aides. And then when you get to the low income, which is the more than 50 but not over 80, that's $29,792 to $46,732. You've got teachers, and instructors, firefighters, police, sheriffs, and patrol officers. And then when you get to the moderate income, which is 80 or above, but does not exceed 120%, which would be 47,316 to 70,000. You have registered nurses and median income for teachers, firefighters, human resource, not the entry level, but the median. If you look at the current conditions now, the 2017 population estimates are 56,000. In 2010, when the last census was done, you were about 43, 44,000. So you've grown 14.2% since 2010. If that continues at that rate, by 2030, you're going to be around 64,000. And if it mimics Lee County's growth, which is estimated to be 31.6%, you'll be around 74,000. A lot of variables in there. Currently,
Don't we know it?
yeah, anything could change that. Currently, the housing units are about 34. There's about 34,000. The households, though, are 20,390. Again, the median income is 58,000. You have about 15% persons who live in poverty. This is that same group of people, not people, but jobs that I've listed out. If you look at, the median gross rate, it's $1,145 for Bonita Springs. This is based just on the 30%. So if you look under that column, you can see that anything in the blue wouldn't be able to afford the median rent here, or they'd have to pay more than 30% of their salary to be able to live in Bonita Springs. I looked up the sales price, what houses were selling for, and actually that should say sales prices as of 2018, September 2018, and that was $275,000. None of those categories would be able to afford a house at 30% in Bonita Springs. So what we have is about 43% of all households earning less than $50,000. And about 27% of all households could afford a median income house. I just kind of looked up, what is on the market right now for homes priced at $150,000, and there were about 71. That was as of Monday. So the information is current as of Monday. Again, I looked at what was available through the MLS and Zillow for the median, which is 47,000 to 70,000, and this is what you have that's currently on the market.
Margaret, if I can, is that in Bonita only, or is that everywhere?
No, that's Bonita.
Okay.
This is Bonita information. So what are the needs? If you look at your census data, 50% of those that are renting, of the households that are renting, are paying more than 30%. And that's about 2,000 rental units. If you look at homeowners with a mortgage, about 39.6 are paying more than 30%. That's 2,400 housing units. And 18% of owners with no mortgage are paying more than 30%. That's another 1,800. So these are pretty conservative based on the fact that we didn't take in any growth of what's going to happen. And we're not considering those individuals that are commuting in, people who live in Lehigh Acres and come to work here, or people who live in Estero or Fort Myers or wherever and don't live here but do work here. So that would be, if you wanted to take care of the people that are living here right now that are paying more than 30%, it would be, those are the numbers that you're looking at. So then you asked me to put together a list of best practices of what was going on across the country. And they generally fall into 5 categories. So you have regulation and governance, you have increase the supply of the units, maintain or restore existing units. And by the way, the census showed that out of the 34,000 housing units you have, 14,000 were empty, were vacant. Or enhance transportation options and increase wages. Now, some of them are much easier than others to accomplish. In your packet, I didn't list them all out here, but in your packet, I put 28 descriptions of best practices. And these are some of the cities throughout the country, and they include Florida communities too, that are doing some pretty good work on affordable housing. And then I broke that down into 48 tools based on those best practices that could be implemented if that's what you desire to do. And again, I only list some of them, such as the infill development, land banking, limited equity home ownership, micro cottages, tax incentives, or regulatory relief are just some of the examples. And then these are my recommendations. Again, they are just recommendations because I have not had feedback on, I like this one, I don't like this one, we're not going to consider that one, that's off the table, that's not doable. So I would recommend that the first thing that needs to be done is you need to develop a plan with some type of goal. We're going to get this percentage of the need in this community addressed, something that can be measured over the years. And in that plan, you need to define the terms. Everybody uses the terms attainable housing, workforce housing, affordable housing. It means something different to everybody. So if your attainable housing is the 80 to 120%, that's what we need to say. This is what we're going to tackle, and this is what we're going to tackle first. And to be perfectly honest with you, there's a lot of people, a lot of agencies doing different things in this community and in Lee County. So there's little pieces of it being done already. But I think the city needs its own plan, and this is what we want to address. What's really important, and it goes with these definitions, is having a communication plan. Something that kind of gives the facts, the myths and the facts. Because I saw a real good advertisement recently with a picture of a teacher. And it says, we'll let her educate our children, but we don't want her to be our neighbor. And she falls into those categories of moderate or low income. So we really need to define what you want to address and then get the word out so that you're not having a lot of pushback that this is public housing. You know, this is subsidized housing. This is, homeless shelters. It's attainable housing based on one of those categories. Again, you need to preserve the existing units that are here. 6,000 units is a huge amount. You don't have a lot of land here. I think a lot can be done with infill programs and with incentives to some of these vacant units to the homeowners or the landowners to fix them up and keep them affordable. I think very important what I'm hearing from developers is the cost of land. It's just so high. That's what prevents them from doing affordable housing. So I think we need to be on the lookout for properties that are available. And particularly, you have an opportunity now, or that's coming open soon with the disaster relief funds to start a land banking to get some of these properties so you can turn them over to be developed for affordable housing. Not done yet. And I know you're assessing the properties that are in the flooded areas. What can be elevated, what can be rehabbed, and what just needs to be bought out? And what is the dollar amount for that? We have no idea what the dollar amount that's needed for that. And then I think it would be very helpful if you had specific regulations for affordable housing. Flexible zoning regs, reduced permit fees, and expedited plan review for them. I know I know the city is, I know your staff is looking at areas where you can put higher density development. I think we need to identify these sites for mixed-use housing, mixed income, so that we know where they are and be able to apply those incentives. And then in transportation, I know you don't provide public transportation, but you could look at bicycle system and ped systems and maybe promote rideshare programs. And then finally, this comes back to everybody, not everybody, but many agencies are doing a small portion of, addressing a small portion of the needs. There should be some type of directory that lets people know where they can go, whether it is assisted living or, low-income housing or attainable housing or what. What is out there, who's doing what, where they can go for help. It's amazing, as I talk to more and more people, I found out, okay, this church is doing this, or this agency is doing that. And you wouldn't know it if you weren't out there talking to all these people. So I think that is really important to consider doing. And then finally, in your report, this is just a portion of it, I gave some potential funding sources. The SHIP, the CDBG, there are some private foundations out there for grants. There's other ways to finance these programs through potentially percentage of the sale tax or surcharge on document recording fees. There's TIFs, and I know you're looking at that. And also linkage fees might be considered. But there's several options that you might want to consider for how do we bring the money into this community in order to build what is needed or renovate what is needed. So with that, I will say that at this point, I need more direction from the board on what you want to delve into deeper on some of these different issues so that we can talk to the attorney and find out what is feasible.
Okay. Counsel, what's your pleasure? Arlene, did you have? Oh.
I'd
Okay.
say, move
Greg?
forward, yeah. I would say move it forward and let's look at it and look at some funding mechanisms and what's attainable and what's really, what's low-hanging fruit that we can get some funding, whether it's a land trust or like you've talked about, land banking.
But is it appropriate at this time? I don't know if you want to take it or if you want
Well,
me.
I think at this evening, what we wanted to do was present the report and let you all have it, because you just received it yesterday as
Yep.
well, have a chance to absorb it. We do have upcoming our budget retreat. We can talk a little bit further then
That's
if there's any financial commitment later on. But as of right now, we thought we'd take the opportunity to absorb it and we could bring it back at a later date for additional direction.
Okay.
I just have one clarification. When you're talking about median income, is that on a individual basis or on a family basis?
Median household income.
It's household
income.
Okay. But then when you're, okay.
Now,
Because when you were relaying it to particular labor types, you're talking about individuals.
those
So-
are individuals.
Right, so when we think about this, we need to focus on the household income, so that conceivably we could have a beginning teacher be a partner in a house or in their housing things, which is, I think, more typical, right?
Yes. If you look, I think it's Appendix D, the final one. I put all of the census data in there, and I highlighted what I used, so it's highlighted in yellow. So you don't have to sort through it.
And my particular interest is in rental income because that's sustainable, whereas facilitating purchases, unless you have some kind of mechanism by which it stays that way after the family moves on to something else. Otherwise, this will be a continual problem.
Sanibel has a very unique program, and it's working very successfully. It's a limited equity where they have a nonprofit that maintains control of the land for them. So that's how they can keep them.
But I want to look at it a little more
Sure.
carefully.
I mean, there's a lot of information there. I didn't think you wanted me to go to over, 28 different projects and what can be done and everything, but it's there. I'm I'm available if you need more information or want to discuss them. Please
Okay.
give me a call.
Thank you. Fred? Fred had a question.
I have three initial thoughts anyway. Number one, we do need this. Number two, we must make sure that we have tightened up our land development code to where, when one of these development goes in, that it's goes in a complementary way to what's already there. And we ain't done a very good job of that to date. We've had places that, you know, the gray house on Bonita Beach Road that everybody doesn't like, the one that's near the big sign. Well, guess what? You got lots of those, but you don't see them because they're over in a neighborhood, but because you don't go by it every day, you don't register. So I think we need to be aware of that, but I'm for it. The other thing that I feel very strongly about, Margaret Wurzel is a person that's been in this business for many, many scores of years, or decades anyway.
Scores?
Not
Scores?
Well, yeah, she's got some scores, actually. And I think we want to make sure we take advantage of that, and she's good at getting grants. I think whatever we do, she needs to be involved in it with us to help us get the biggest bang for the buck. Other than that, I think we need to think on it a little bit.
And I think, Arlene, you had mentioned a good point at our retreat.
We can address, we can have some preliminary addressing it there, but this was an opportunity, we've been looking at scheduling. We wanted the opportunity to actually present the report to you this evening and then let the council absorb it and provide us with some more feedback.
Council, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much. Fred?
Well, there is one other thing. What we're working for here is affordable housing. And I think there's another need in Bonita, not a huge need like this, but a need. And I think we almost are going to have to get something going with the religious organizations, levying churches and all that. Margaret could be helpful in that. And that is, we need some housing for elderly, low income. Some will be people that are disabled. But that's a niche that we need to take care of. We need to take care of our own people. I don't want us to attract people in, but we do have needs in Bonita Springs. Unfortunately, those can usually be a multiple floor building too, as opposed to single level.
Right. Great. Thank you. Okay, Mayor and council member items. Item A we did, which was ratifying the letter. Peter, thanks for bringing that up while Mayor Wayne was here. The next item is the second reading and public hearing of the following ordinances, and public comment is allowed on this.
Correct. There'll be complete public hearings. I'll read the first item in by title, and then I believe we still have David on the phone. He probably wants to take us off mute at this time.
I'm here, thank you.
All right. First one is an amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Section 4, zoning, amending Section 4-326, deviations from zoning regulations, deviations from general zoning regulations, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, Scrivener's errors, inclusion in the code, and an effective date. And again, we have David Theriak, our special counsel, available by phone. David, did you want to introduce the item?
I think Mr. Dolmer might be doing that.
Okay. Yep.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
Here it is. One of the items that we had looked at for doing quick fixes was this particular item, and it had to do with items that came out of the zoning workshop and things that we had looked to do to make quick changes to have an impact upon our development in the city. And what we came up with was the idea that deviations would need to be or need to provide a public benefit in order for them to be approved. This would be an additional criteria to the two that are already in the Land Development Code. and would allow council to evaluate them or requests for deviations based upon that standard. Okay, so this has been brought before you several times, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Counsel? Greg?
I do. I mean, I brought it up last time, and I wasn't, it's not that I wasn't happy, I just didn't understand it, and I still have questions about it. I've got a list about 5 or 6, so I don't know how. I mean, I guess first and foremost is, what are we trying to fix? I mean, if it's not broken, why do we fix it? Have we ran into problems in the past to where, you know, we've approved things either as the council and it wasn't for public benefit? It wasn't, or it was a detriment. I mean, what are we trying to fix here?
The concern that's been brought up to me started with, and I won't say it's limited to, but started with requests for deviations for side setbacks or for setbacks. And those deviations tended to be granted without much consideration for the overall impact or benefit to the public. And so that's where I think that we kind of got this ball rolling and this conversation started. As it progressed, it became the idea that if somebody is going to be given a relief from the code, they should be providing the public something in return. And this was a policy or not a policy, but a practice that David Theriak had outlined in your workshop. And it does allow you the opportunity to raise the standard of review for these deviations for them to be approved. What it does is it takes away the appearance that, I'll say, side setback or setback deviations are being given away simply because they're being requested, and makes a developer or an applicant think about what they're wanting and what they're willing to provide as a result of that leniency for that standard.
But but it's coming before us. It's not done administratively, right?
Correct. This would be part of a public hearing request.
No, I mean even in the past, it's come before us.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so that's what I mean. I mean, we're still making the decision. I just, and it's already in there where it says, the current regulation says that the regulation for protect safety and welfare, and it even says, illustrate how each deviation would operate to a benefit and or at least not a detriment. It's already in there, so I don't understand why we're trying to fix something that already says it. We're trying to be more detailed oriented, but in that, I feel that it's going to tie our hands. If they come up with a legitimate public thing, then whether we like it or not, we're going to have to approve it. Whereas the current regulations, we do have some deviations, some flexibility to say, we don't see it the same way.
Yes, sir. And I think the idea is that it's not so much the tying of hands, but the increasing of standard. And so what this would do, you're exactly right, is you look at this under a different light. Simply a request for a deviation does not automatically assume that deviation will be approved. It means that there needs to be a little bit more thought provided into it. And you are correct. There is language in there that generally addresses this. But I believe that out of that discussion was the intent to maybe elevate that standard, maybe look at it under a slightly more intense light.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think that's what we rely on you and community development, because I know on many occasions, whether it was the Terry Street Assembly or whether it was Bonita Village, whatever, you came back and said, here are the stipulations that we would like to see in order to grant this deviation, whether it's a zoning or whether it's a setback. So I think we already have that with you, with community development, saying, hey, we'd like to see A, B, and C, and then the 7 of us make that decision. All right, hey, we like 1, 2, and 3 that you've done, but 4 and 5 seems a little excessive, and we don't believe that. Is that all right with the applicant? So my fear is that A, it's not broken. We already have the standard set that says, if it's a problem, we're not going to do it. You've got to show a benefit or at least not show a deficit. I just like to have the flexibility that if they come in for whatever reason, they can show a positive public benefit, whether we like it or not. We may not have the ability to say no.
May I speak?
Amy?
Because I think there's a reason why this is brought before us, because we had a discussion with the zoning board, and there were issues where this was not handled in the way that you suggest is in the code. And I do think that community development does a lot of negotiation before it comes before council. And once you have the completed project with it seems like it's going along the way, it's hard to say, you know, let's not grant this particular deviation or that, because then it gets really complicated, because then you have to start negotiating. So I don't think that we really did follow the rules in regard, or the allowances to show a public benefit for several projects that came before council. And that's why this is here. It's not because everything is going fine. And it was just, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying show a positive benefit, and that the staff still has the ability to guide them to the kind of benefit that they think is worthwhile. So I think that this is something that was clear from the zoning workshop that we had, that this was something that we wanted to have. And you don't have to ever grant a deviation for anything, even if this is in here. We're not entitling them to deviations or variances. We still have to vote on that.
Mike, did you have something?
Well, and as it is now, we don't have to grant a deviation. We have the power to say, no, you know, we really would like to see some more buffering or something else. But, I mean, to me, this is just codifying basically extortion. You know, we're requiring you to give us something in order to get what you want. And I don't think that's how it should work. You know, if somebody's coming, especially on smaller projects, the way it's written now, it's a public benefit or not to the detriment of. On something smaller, it may not be a detriment of something, and it's not that big of a deal. Give them, you know, the deviation. Not require them, hey, we want this, this, and this for you to get this simple little deviation. So.
And they may not be able to show a public benefit.
Yeah.
Rather than the way it currently reads is just a benefit.
Or what you define as a public benefit might not be what I define as a public benefit. Who gets to define what's the benefit?
Well, it's always going to be the sitting council, and that's what we have now.
And
you know.
it changes.
Yeah.
So every single-family house that gets put in this town, that it's not a PD, has requirements with respect to it.
Mm-hmm.
Setback requirements, et cetera. All right. So what a deviation is in this context, in a planned development, is people come in, they say they don't want to do what people normally do, for example, for single-family houses. For example, forget about the setback. I want to go to the wall. So without a standard in here, there's basically a different rule for planned developments as opposed to everybody else in town who follows the regular code. So really, when you come down to it, the question is what the standard should be. And Greg, you went through it, and, you know, you emphasized the words operate for the benefit, but there's a least common denominator in here, not to the detriment. So I think that's simply the point. Put this on an equal status with everybody else, and don't use a planned development as a way around normal zoning. That's it. And planned development, but in and of itself, is supposed to have additional benefits that go with it. It's not extortion. This is, in effect, a deviation is, in layman's terms, an exemption from what's normal. So, I don't think this is anything dramatic. It sure as heck is not out of bounds with what almost everybody else has.
Could we hear from David, what he thinks about this in regard to extortion or whatever? What else? Hello?
David, are you there?
We put him to sleep already?
I'm here, but I'm having a very difficult time hearing the discussion. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay. I get, the question was kind of at this point, what are your thoughts, or?
Well, the proposed language, the last sentence in A specifically states that there is no entitlement. So an applicant cannot come in and say, well, here's a public benefit and your hands are tied. The city council retains the right to determine whether what's being offered is a adequate justification for allowing an applicant not to meet your minimum requirements. And that's really what you're talking about. Your deviation process is being used for folks to not meet the minimum requirements of your code. And what this language changes from, where it used to be if they could demonstrate that there's not a detriment, the new standard would be that there has to be something given back as part of the development process that justifies allowing a deviation. That could be an increased buffer, it could be an architectural feature, it could be increased open space. It will really come down on a case-by-case basis what the council determines to be an adequate justification for allowing somebody not to meet your minimum requirements.
Council, do you have questions for David?
Is that not what we have now, though? That they're coming for a deviation, and we have the right to grant it or not grant it.
Under a standard, Mike, the standard, you can't just blow them off. You have to meet a standard, and the standard is at least not to the detriment.
David, did you hear the question?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Basically, what Mike's question was is,
don't we have it now?
Don't we have it now?
What this changes is the not to the detriment of. If an applicant can come in and say, I want to reduce my side setback or a wetland setback, and it doesn't adversely affect somebody, your code allows that to proceed as currently written. The change here is that there needs to be a quid pro quo. If we're going to let you deviate from the minimum requirements, then there should be something about your project that justifies that deviation.
Okay, along that same line of thought, and you've been here long enough to kind of see this, isn't that kind of what community development does on a case-by-case basis when they come in with, here are the stipulations, we will grant this setback if you do X, Y, and Z?
Sometimes no. There was a deviation for, and I forget the project name, but there was a deviation from the wetland or a lake, and the building needed to be closer to the lake, and there really wasn't a quid pro quo that justified saying, all right, well, we're going to give you the increased buffer, we're going to give you an architectural feature, we're going to give you something that says we're not just allowing you to not meet our minimum requirements. And it's a mindset. If y'all are comfortable with allowing folks to not meet your minimum requirements without the quid pro quo back, that's your policy call. The zoning board workshop, when we conducted that meeting, what came out of it was a majority of the folks gave the direction to say, we don't want to simply give deviations without getting something back. And that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
And Laura, you had a question?
No, actually, I'd like to move that we vote on this.
I just had one more statement, though. As it is now, we decide whether something's a detriment or if it's a public benefit. So we have this power right now. If, like with that wetland setback, if it was a big issue, we would have said, no, you can't have that deviation. Or if it was a big issue, we could have asked for, well, because you're getting that, we would like a little relief over here. Give us a little more space on this side of the wetland. We could have done that as is. But we don't need to say, it's a detriment, because if something is a detriment, we're not going to do it. And it's up to the council to decide if it's a detriment or not, or if it's a public benefit or not. So we have this in there now. I don't think we need this.
But before we vote, I remember that case, what it was, that the reply of the developer was, if we can get 5 feet closer to this pond, then we can lay our buildings out to where they're all as far away as we can get from Spanish Wells, as I recall. And that was the excuse as to why they were requesting the deviation. They said they could go the other way, but it'll put them closer to Spanish Wells, and they were saying that was a benefit.
And that would be a public benefit in my eyes.
There you go.
John?
The deviation was with the garage locations, but that's,
Oh.
in terms of,
different
it's
one.
really neither here nor there. The only thing I would ask to amend in the language that's being presented to you is there was a change where you excluded Chapter 3 from item B.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is your development standards. I would simply ask if you are agreeable to include that chapter so that they can be presented to you as part of the deviation request.
So chapter 6 and 3.
Yes, sir. It wouldn't change the standard. It would just allow those standards to be brought before you as part of the zoning request.
So the house that we talked about on Beach Road, that we all have concerns, if that were a planned development, all bets are off. Guy comes in, there's no detriment, I want to go right to the property line, I want to blow through anything that otherwise a single-family house would have to apply for. It's a statement, it's not a question.
Okay.
But the same statement, if he said, I'll put an extra foot
Well,
on
and
your
I just-
sidewalk,
Yeah.
we would look at it as a public benefit.
Right, there you go. Perhaps.
Perhaps. But that's the vagaries of what's going on. Why change when we have the power right here to say yea or nay after they go through the zoning board and the
You only have the
The
power.
reality is that we don't do that.
right.
We do not generally, I mean, unless it's gross, we do not second-guess the staff because we feel they've already been through this.
And you only have the power under a standard. We're talking about what the standard
So
should
we're,
be.
just, I don't know, I think
would say we should
maintaining
vote.
minimum standards is pretty important.
I don't think we're getting rid of them.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. We allow that to be less than the minimum standard.
Council, what's your pleasure?
That's what David said.
Move to approve.
We still have to open up the public hearing.
Public.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
So there's been a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's been a motion to approve. Is there a second? Motion fails.
Motion to deny?
Yep.
Motion. Okay, you make a motion
I'll
to deny? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay. Public comment?
Sorry, I don't understand what we just, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were doing. I'm sorry, it's my fault.
Is it members of the public that would like to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, there's a motion to deny. There's been a
Deny the
second.
changes.
Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
No.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilman Carumba?
No.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilman Carr?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move now on to item D. Derek.
Yes. Asleep. Wait, what?
Item 10B, an amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code 4 zoning, creating section 4-371, allocation of density and intensity for mixed-use development, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, inclusion in the code, and an effective date.
Okay, John.
Yes, sir. Another item that had its genesis back at the zoning workshop that had to deal with how we calculate density and intensity in mixed-use developments. And the debate and discussion has involved, do we allow the gross area of a project to be counted both for residential and for non-residential uses, or do we need to have a specific portion of each site that's designated for each use? Meaning if you had 1 acre of property and you had residential use and non-residential use, you could split that up to ½ acre of the property being used to calculate density and the other half being used to calculate your non-residential floor area ratio. This item simply clarifies that and provides specific standards that you would need particular property for calculation, which prevents what's known as double dipping. There were a couple of changes that were included at the LPA, and that included the exclusion of areas 6A and 6B in your old 41 overlay district. The LPA's intent there was that they wanted to focus density and intensity downtown and wanted to remove restrictions down there to allow that. The second change was to exclude the first floor, non-residential in downtown, that section is already in your code. That would simply be carrying forth the existing policy.
Okay. Counsel?
Is that in the code or in a comp plan?
I'm sorry, comp plan. Yes, sir.
Counsel?
Well, I just think that there's double dipping for a reason, because you're trying to get commercial in addition to the residential. If you don't have that, it may just make sense for a developer to put nothing but housing in, and then we get, that many more residents in the city, but we don't get the benefit of the commercial. And I know some people have talked about that's not what they want in the city. They want, to have a bustling businesses and everything else in the community. We don't want to be strictly residential where everybody has to drive somewhere else to conduct business. So, I mean, to me, double dipping makes it sound bad, when in reality, I think there's a benefit to having this, so.
Fred?
Well, I know that before I became on council, but I'd passed the magic date where I was on council, I spent a day, I think with Councilman O'Flynn down at Randy Henderson's, the big one-day meeting on the future of downtowns. And they gave all kind of presentations, including the economics of the advantage of having commercial on the first floor in downtown, followed by offices where appropriate, or residential all the way up, which could be individually owned condos, or it could be rentals or whatever. And I think that we should not at least do this at this time till we get farther down the road with DPZ and see where that's going. And I think the only thing that I would, and I'm not sure this isn't covered anyway, I don't think we should permit double dipping where you'd have commercial, where you got single family homes in the development. There's some mixed use that way. But as long as it's multi-level, I think it's a good thing, and I don't see a problem with it. And it allows us to get actually, according to that big seminar with all the national and international experts, you're really maxing out ad valorem. Because you got commercial, and you got offices, and then residential, and all stacked up. The more you stack up, the more you earn per acre of land or square foot of land or whatever.
Counsel?
I just got,
Greg?
oh, I think Peter's first.
Yeah,
Peter?
which is that this has got nothing to do with upstairs, downstairs. We have in our code the ability to have commercial downstairs and residential density upstairs. The only question here is, do you double count the property for purposes of density? That's all.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Greg?
I just had a question, probably for Derek and maybe David on the phone. Because of advertising and all that, and I've heard it 2 or 3 times, and we've had members of the public come up because of the DPZ, can we put this off to a date like 6-8 months from now, or does it have to be, relatively soon if we want to wait to what we do with the DPZ?
If you were going to continue this to a time certain, and it was in a fairly short period of time, we would need to re-advertise. But if we're talking anything beyond a month, I would go through the full re-advertisement for the second hearing. And if we're talking 8-9 months, then I would do a first and second reading.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, because of DPZ, we've heard 2 or 3 people say it. We've got form-based codes, which we may go to downtown, which is in this same overlay to include. Would we want to change it twice? Because are we going to have to go back and change this again? If we vote on this today and approve it, and then DPZ comes in and does form-based codes, and there's some contradiction there, we're going to have to come back and change this again and go through the...
Why don't you just exempt out downtown?
That's what's in there already.
Just, no, the
That's
only
what-
things in there is the
2 sections.
6A and
Says
6B.
Well,
I'm
that's-
talking, well...
Which are the
form,
mixed
but-
use?
But that's where you can do mixed use. I mean, that's what it's the
But
whole
with
point.
form-based coding, we're looking at the whole entire downtown
Correct.
area.
Derek, you've
Also-
heard that conversation. What are your thoughts on that?
On what's going on right now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
With
car-
what's
it's-
with
it's a-
how it's written, with
it's a-
what we just
it's a
what we
cart
just said.
before horse sort of situation. If you are going to have form-based codes come in later on, they could be adapted to address this language if it's existing at the time. If the two are going to be incompatible completely, we would have to amend this at a future date.
Okay, thank you. Counsel? Fred?
Mr. Mayor, well, if we adopt this, what you're doing is tying the hands of the form-based code to where you're only going to be able to do within what our current other codes will allow them to do, unless you amend them.
Or, yeah,
And,
we'll
and,
have to
and the
change
thing is, we've got a lot of land on Bonita Beach Road that we need to get some good stuff on, and if letting somebody have that extra density by not counting the first floor that's commercial, that's allowing that square footage to be allowing them to get a few more units, I don't have a problem with it. Parking's gonna dictate all this stuff anyway, because you can only build what you can support with parking. And if we want to do anything, we want to tighten up the parking code to where you got to have it either on-site or you got to have it under control within short walking distance.
Yeah,
That- that
it was
ties
my
it.
understanding that the form-based code had to comply with existing densities in land development code and a comprehensive plan, that all it's doing is working on the outside form of what it looks like. So even if we do have, I'm comfortable with excluding 6A and 6B, which is the mixed-use area of the downtown area where this would apply anyway, so that in order for DPC to give us a report, which should come sometime soon. But what the double dipping concern that was raised at zoning, and again, we all participated in that workshop, we got input from our zoning board, was that this ability to use what we call double dipping exceeded the land-based, the reading of what the land-based code said for density and intensity by using this double dipping mechanism, is because it changed it. It manipulated our land-based code. That's what this is here for. If we don't care about that anymore, fine, but I think we should go ahead with this. You know, we've already explored this in a detailed way. We've talked about what the problems that had happened, and if that hadn't occurred, we wouldn't be talking about this.
Well, I just think that this may be beneficial for other areas of the city besides just downtown. And at the workshop, we talked about things and we said, yes, we'd look into them further. We didn't say we were going to do them. So we've looked into them further, and this is not something I look forward to doing, so.
Laura?
I would motion that we move to vote on this, not put it off and do roll call and we just say what we're going to say, because we need to get it off. We've discussed this almost to death. And we just need to vote.
Thank you, Laura. And before we do that, David, do you have any thoughts?
Well, there is one change that needs to be made if the ordinance passes in E1. There's a reference to policy 1.1.11.B.4, and that should now be .3 as a result of the Terry Street Amendment. We corrected a numbering issue.
Okay. Okay, council, what's your pleasure?
I just want to make one point, which is that the current density allowed under our code, perhaps under the comp plan, in 6A and 6B is as much as 87 units per acre. 87 an acre. To put that in context, Germain Arena apartments are 15 an acre. Mosaic is less than 20 an acre. So I ran for office in this town. I didn't want to turn this into a mirror image of the east coast of Florida. So if we want to get rid of zoning, we want to not adopt reasonable stuff, in my view, we're going a long way from that. But that's just one person's opinion. One person's opinion.
Thanks, Pete. Fred?
Yeah.
Well, John, I'm going to ask you a question. If we don't know the answer and we need to get it, is that in fact true that we can do 84 units per acre?
87 an acre.
87?
That was given a number by John.
Yes, we ran the calculation, and there was, if you look at all of the density bonus provisions that are included in the plan, and you were to take advantage of all of them, we did do some calculations, and the numbers were accurate.
Now, if we change this, what would we be able,
And Fred, I'm sorry to interrupt. John, where'd that number come from?
That came from that section of the comp plan that outlines that density bonus. And it includes everything from public improvements to affordable housing. There's 3 different items in there which you can obtain density bonuses from.
But even with the basic, without the density bonus, it was well over 50 an acre. The basic conversion without bonuses.
I don't remember exactly what it was.
Absolutely.
I remember doing
Right.
the calculation with it, yes.
Right.
That
So,
I
so-
wouldn't disagree.
Right, so the notion here is 87, but double dip again. So could be more. But welcome to Miami.
Just a quick question based on that, not that I'm arguing your point. Are those realistic? Is that a realistic, when I say that, like you said, it's based on if you do public thing, affordable housing, all those, is that a, let's be honest, a realistic, problematic or
Greg, can I make a
pro-
point?
Yeah.
You can go on Realtor.com right now, and you can find an acre downtown on Old 41 where it's basically 50 an acre for sale. Realistic, already done by the previous council, together with a large amount of commercial.
That'd be the Longitude project.
Right.
And it was just over an acre when you include all the property.
But what, let's use something that's not been already zoned. What about right in front of Mike's place where the old corner produce used to be?
Mm-hmm.
Or in front of Napa?
Anything at 6A?
Is that the 11 lot? Is that what you said?
6A or 6B?
Well,
Fred, well, yeah,
Okay.
Fred, then Mike.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, and I'm glad Councilman O'Flynn brought that up, I think what we need to do is fix the damn double density, bonus densities and all that, and put some reasonable cap on it. But I don't think that this particular thing should be touched because it still encourages the ability to go up with maybe another floor. I'm not in favor of 84 or 54, but I don't think you could do it anyway because parking would bite you.
Well, I think maybe, Greg, that's kind of what you were asking.
Right.
All right, so let's take an acre of land. We all know roughly what an acre of land is. This be a little fun exercise to roll through. What is 88 units going to look like on that 1 acre of land? And I hate to say it, forget parking right now, but what's that going to look like?
That could vary wildly, but I think that when you're looking to get to those type of numbers, it's the density bonus, it's also the density conversion, and so thank you, Councilman Forbes, for bringing that up. So there's a number of things that you would be doing to get to that number. You also have to fit within certain constraints, but if you can fit within your height limitations and you can fit within your setbacks, the units can be adjusted internally to meet that number. So when you say, what is it going to look like, you have maximum heights in the plan. You have setbacks.
So you know what the height's going to be.
You know what the height's going to be.
You know what the setbacks are.
The side setbacks and those
You know what you need for
sub-districts are
parking,
zero.
even though I said ignore parking. How much of that land's going to be parking? Of course, that can be underneath, right?
It could be, and in the case of Longitude, there was an internal parking structure. So if you want to get creative and you want to put some talented designers at work, you can bring that number up. I mean, the opportunities are there. I won't say they're simple to get to, but the calculation is there, which means the ability to design it, if you have someone with the talent, can get to that
You're
number.
talking a 600 square foot apartment. You're talking a 900 square foot.
But it could also
because
be a range.
because I think right now, and I hear about the advertising and the re-advertising. I don't think we have all our questions answered.
The problem with answering that question is just the alternatives can go in so many different directions. I can tell you the basic box it's going to look like. I can also tell you that if adopted, not presented before each night, but if adopted, a form-based code is going to do a lot towards controlling the form. But when you're asking what does 80 units an acre look like, I can show you 80 units an acre done well, and I can show you 80 units an acre done very poorly. And the two do not look anything alike. But the calculation, Councilman O'Flynn is correct, the calculation is there and available if you choose to take advantage of it.
But, well, and we do have the regulations on the size, so it has to fit in a certain size box. So if they're going to get more units, it's still going to be the same size building. They could have done less units and fell within the number that we're looking for. Or they might have got the bonus and a higher number, but it's going to be smaller units. That's going to help out with workforce housing, because that's one of the things that they look for is a smaller unit that somebody can afford. So, I mean, we're going to be under the height. We still have a restriction on height. And as part of a previous council, I voted for Longitude. I would still love to see Longitude built there. It's a good project. It's a beautiful building, and I think it would be great for the city. So I don't see what's wrong with Longitude at whatever number you'd mentioned, 50 units an acre or whatever it went.
48, 47?
48, I believe
But
is the correct
I,
number.
I don't see a problem there at all. It was a beautiful concept, and I'd still like to see it
And
built.
really, I think that what you're going to see is if you start looking at the higher numbers, you're going to need about an acre, if not more, to start to physically fit things on there. If you start to get below an acre, the space doesn't generally exist to have that many units on site. When you get to an acre, 2 acres,
And everything they'd have to do to get to that bonus density usually has to be on site. Some things could be done
On-site or
in lieu
nearby,
or
depends.
nearby.
There's portions of
but
it
I
that-
mean, it'd be very hard to get for them to get up into the 80s.
And just as a side note, regardless of how this particular discussion goes, I think that as we evolve our downtown regulations, I would recommend we look at those density bonus provisions to see how they fit into our overall vision.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Yeah, one last point.
Yes.
One last point, sorry.
Peter and then Laura. How's that?
Which is, probably other than flooding, which has surpassed it unfortunately, the biggest concern of the people in Bonita Springs is overdensity, the traffic, getting jammed up like the east coast of Florida. If we want to just keep going down the road, building higher, building fatter, building more density, and turning this place into the east coast of Florida, I disagree with that.
Laura?
I disagree with it also, but I also move that we vote on this, yes or no. And
Would you like to make a motion?
I thought
Motion to
I did.
motion to accept, okay.
No, I'm against this.
Okay, motion to
But
deny.
I motion to vote on it, so that we vote. I mean, I can't decide myself, right?
I make a motion to move this.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to accept
Right.
and a second.
As amended by David Theriak with the change.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion on the council? Because then we're going to go to public comment. Council, anything at this time? Okay, public comment. Members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. There's a point that's come up since the mortgage crisis and so on, which I think most people, lay people, including yourselves, are not aware of. First off, if you're a developer and you want to do a mixed-use development, you have to make sure that you fall in the federal guidelines, or those condos become non-warrantable condos, which is junk on the market. Now, if you want to turn downtown into junk, you tie the hands so that we can't meet the 25% ratio. And that is, in the new act, 25% of the building can be commercial. 26%, all your condos upstairs are junk. So on my project, we did double dip in order to come up with the numbers. And that's why we had to have, that's what I tried to explain before, that's why we had to have 4 floors. The first floor gives you the commercial, the next 3 floors give you the 75%. If you don't do that, you're non-warrantable. You don't want non-warrantable condominiums in the town, then you really have Miami. Because those will be worthless, because the average person can't buy them. You can't get an FHA loan, you can't get a Freddie Mac loan, you can't get a Department of Agriculture loan. You have to go out and find a junk lender to loan you the money for them. So you be very careful when you start doing this. Because right now, I mean, I worked with them. Nobody ever told me you could go up to 80 units. I might want to reapply now. But seriously, you know, I worked with them, and I had to get my point to the point where I can get the 25% number to work. And if you take this double dipping, what you call double dipping, which is nonsense, if you take that away, then the developer can't meet that warrantable condo standard set in the new Lending Act. Did I make myself clear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Jeff Savinsky. I've been here for 37 years. I'm part of the Save Our Weeks Fish Camp movement. And what we want is to make sure that this change in land development code or change in zoning does not inhibit the public access to the water. As you were mentioning, putting that many units per acre could squeeze the public out. You could have a privatization situation where they're squeezed onto one section. I know London Bay Homes has agreed they're going to give us some sort of public access. It hasn't been specific. And in a land development code or zoning change, this could inhibit the public from having that access. I want to make sure all the council members, if they move forward with this, to make sure the public interest is in the best benefit of this community. So therefore, we disagree with any kind of zoning change or land development code that will keep us from that. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Hey, John?
Hello, everyone. Honorable Mayor, Council. John Pano, for the record, President of the Bonita Springs Downtown Alliance, CEO of CGT Kayaks, and local resident of Bonita Springs. Just one more thing on this issue. I would like to see that the ability to make these changes are left in your hands and not put into something that's not flexible, that you don't have the ability to change. I want to see the city, we would like to see the city have that flexibility. The owners of the property along there deserve to have the ability to try to develop that down there with the view and vision that the community has. So having said that, I would ask you to not pass this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hello, welcome.
For the record, Kathy McGrath. I'm confused. Is this the general public comment on anything? I thought what the
On this.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other members of the public that would like to speak on this item? Public hearing? Going once, going twice? Okay. Council, there's been a motion to accept and a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes?
No.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt?
No.
Councilwoman Carr?
No.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
4-3 votes.
Okay. I think now, unless my schedule is wrong, we're going to move on to public comment in general. Okay, public comment at this time?
Mr. Mayor, this is David Theriak.
Hi,
Do you need me any further, or can I hang up?
Derek, council, are we good?
We're good.
All right, go Florida State. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening, council. Good evening, mayor, support staff. As you can see, there's passionate people in here for what I'm about to present to you. Thank you, Jeff. For the record, Jim Weeks, from Weeks Fish Camp and Save Weeks Fish Camp project and several other things around. You guys all know me. As a non-agenda item, I want to keep this short. And I mostly came before you tonight because I want to present you updated paperwork of my vision of Weeks Fish Camp that you asked me to present in 2017. And I would like to hand them out if you don't mind.
I was going to say Arlene will help you there. Thank you, Jim.
The assistant.
Do more.
That's true. Chain of command, Feeney. Come on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
If I got a copy, you need any more?
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna restart your time, Jim. I want you to have plenty of time to speak.
Thank you. I'd like to begin with, as you see, in 2017, Bonita Springs is, they asked us to come forward as a community and ask for the vision of Weeks Fish Camp. I still have the green sheet here. It is from June 21st, 2017. And I like that you guys also put in their history. I know several of you guys know the history of the property, and you know about Weeks Fish Camp and what's coming up and what's being asked to be done on it. It is zoned for public use. I'm sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. All right. I'm here to also, the new owners that took over the property is out there in the neighborhood presenting their vision of what they think Weeks Fish Camp probably should become. And they're going to be asking for rezoning, I would think. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to come down the pike. They when they bought the property, they don't know the history about it like you guys do, and like the community knows the history of the property. And they tried to say it in a banner, April 22nd, 2018, that a marina was not feasible there. Well, we all know that that's just not right. I have had P&Ls done on it. I know that marina is feasible there because I was part of the original group to put the marina there and service the public. Okay? So the numbers will work. And I hear this talk about rezoning, comp plan, and no change and no changes. They say you change a comp plan or zoning when the property, I always get this wrong, when the property does not meet the community needs. We know that's not the case here. This property is zoned adequately for tourist use, public access, and what has been there for 75 years. Bonita Springs has embraced the history of the pioneers, and the Weeks family is not excluded from that. You guys have done it with downtown area. You've done it with Holden Steadfast. When other developers came forward to you to put a different project in there than what you knew that the community is needing to have, and that is adequate public access to the waterfront. We need to draw tourists down here. We just had a big red tide epidemic. No one knows what's going on with that. But a marina with a base in there that we can go out there and study it, make sure that everything's good, I just get nervous, you understand? Keep it simple. This area here, if we was to give any away, I feel that the community is gonna lose. But if that's the case, if there's any kind of situation, 7 acres is required for parking for what we need, for trailer turnarounds, for as much public use as that marina is gonna have. You got several communities around here that just always tell you, build it bigger, build it bigger. The marina, we need water access to the marina, so we need another 3 or 4 acres at least to have that. So as we move forward, I mean, it's simple, Mayor, council members, no rezoning Weeks Fish Camp. Let's make sure the marina gets back in there. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the
Any
information.
questions? No? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
To your knowledge, how many years has it been since a
You know what, this really isn't the forum for
Okay,
this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
no,
I'll
that's not your
apologize. I
fault.
apologize.
Fred, you can have a sidebar conversation.
Okay.
Okay?
I
Thank you.
apologize.
No,
Thank you,
thank you.
guys.
This is
Thank you,
not a
Mayor.
Q&A format.
I
right,
understand. Thank
At
you,
this
Mayor.
time,
I
so thank
appreciate
you very
you
much,
presenting
Jim.
that.
I don't understand.
Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay. John, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Council, John Pano again. I just want to say how important access to Weeks Fish Camp is to everyone in Bonita Springs. Speaking as a kayak vendor, that was once our only access to Mount Key, and we did our signature trips out to Mount Key from that location. So it's very important for all the public to have access, and it's very important that we make sure the developer focuses on getting us that access to the water there and the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Other members of the public? Welcome.
Thank you. Again, Danville Ledbetter with London Bay. This is probably a good time to correct the record. Originally, I said September 18th when I came up to begin with. We are holding that public meeting for everybody in an effort to share the plan so that people can see the public access component and we can have the input necessary to before we go before you guys with our application. So that meeting is October 18th, and it's held at the Estero High School. We look forward to having members like you, Jim. Obviously, we've had conversations already, so these continued conversations are productive, and we look forward to them. So I just wanted to correct the record. What's that? 6 o'clock. Excuse me, 6 o'clock.
Great, thank
All
you.
right. Yep,
October
thank you.
18th at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
At Stero High School.
Correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, other members of the public? Welcome, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Great.
My name is Jessica Cole. I am also, like Jim, from a pioneer family here in Florida, 6 generations, born and raised, went to preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school here in Bonita Springs, Florida. Bought my first house with my fiance in El Dorado Acres, probably about 4 years ago, maybe about 3 months before they closed Weeks Fish Camp. And it was our dream to live in that neighborhood because we were like, we can't afford to live on the water. We're big on the water, jet skis, paddleboards, or boats. we can't afford to buy something on the river and have direct access, but our dream was to be close to Weeks Fish Camp because we could just put in. You know, we'd had the ease to the Estero Bay, and this has kind of like killed our dream to have that, especially for the community who can't afford to have a piece of the water. To be in proximity to it and have access to it is so important for your working force here. So I think there needs to be a fine balance, especially since London Bay is proposing to bring in a retirement community, which I know we need to feed a certain demographic, especially as our baby boomers are coming of age. But we also need to feed the needs of our young families in our community to have access to the Estero Bay. So my fiance and I actually went and did some timing, you know, so we went into the Imperial River and we went up through Creation, and it's about a 45-minute idle to the Estero Bay from those closest marinas or access to the water. So you're spending, you know, 45 minutes both ways just to get out to the bay. That's a lot of time that the community has to spend just to get to enjoy our bay. So we're just wanting you to consider that and to make sure that any rezoning is in the benefit of us as a community to have access to the water.
Great.
So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hello, you're back.
Good evening again. I'm still here. Kathy McGrath, for the record. Let's see if I'm in the right program right now. I also, first of all, want to comment on this week's fishing camp. I mean, I'm not a pioneer family. I'd like to think I am. Been here since, been coming here since '63. And I remember weeks before the Hyatt was there and everything else. So we need not only public access, but the parking. And I will ditto Ed Weeks. Let's face it, he knows everything about it. So I will agree with him, and do not, zoning and all of you, do not give away any part of the tourist zoning. That's number one. The second thing I'd like to talk about is I guess it's city attorney's 13B, about city property, bamboo in particular. And I want you to know, I deeply respect Alex Grant. He's been here probably longer than I have, and he knows the lay of the land and everything. And yes, it would be very nice to just have open space and walkways for the people, but I still think it can be properly developed, and we need it on the tax rolls. It's unique. It's narrow, but it's beautiful. And there's no doubt in my mind that in this day and age, a developer sooner or later is going to come along with a proposal that you will be able to accept, that will take into consideration the possible flooding and all. Well, I think Tony, at one of the previous council meetings, when he was talking about his project, he said he's done it before, and he's going to do it a block away from the Imperial River, where he can flood-proof it without raising it. So I disagree with keeping it. Sure, it'd be nice to be an open space, but I think when the time comes and someone comes with a proper development plan, I hope you will approve it. Mixed use, but the one important thing I've always said is public access on both sides of the river so they can walk and enjoy it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kathy. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. City Attorney's report. Derek.
Thank you. At your last meeting, you had a request from Mosaic at Oak Creek they wish to proceed forward with their development, but they had not had the time to conduct an independent impact fee analysis. So what they were asking for at that point was to pay the rates that they felt that they were vested under, and then to conduct that study, and at a later date, before we issued any COs, they would pay the differential. And so what I've done is I prepared an agreement based on that. We provided an invoice for them for the 2014 impact fee rates. They're going to pay those rates going forward, and then that will become the floor. They have 60 days to provide their study, and then we have 30 days to review that study, make sure we're in agreement with those amounts. Then they will pay the differential at that point. If we cannot come to an agreement on that, there'll be a 30-day period for both the city staff and Mosaic to work out the terms of the payment. And if ultimately it all fails through, we're going to withhold until they come to the current rate schedule, which will be what's being adopted in November. So we think that this protects the city, but allows them to come in and use the process that's normally applied for ahead of time, pulling building permits. As you know, You have to pay your impact fees at the time of building permit. They're not looking to finish this project and get CO until sometime late into next year. So we'll have plenty of time to work out those issues.
Council, what's your pleasure?
So
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve in a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Okay, great. Derek, anything else?
No, I'm settling in. Your staff has been wonderful, and as far as I know, everything's going smoothly.
We're a delightful bunch.
I can't see what their facial expressions over there.
Great. Well, welcome, Derek. Thank you very much. Arlene, City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At our last meeting, the council adopted Resolution 1875, which created the Charter Review Committee. At this time, you have a draft proposal to begin the process of nominating folks to sit on the committee. We are looking for eventually a total of 9. There would be 7 appointed members and 2 alternates. There's a procedure for how the alternates move forward. We were hoping to begin that process this evening so that we could then begin getting everything in line to start scheduling those meetings and making sure there's proper public notice.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion, I guess my only discussion would be, and unless I'm missing it, when do you want the names? How do you want to do this?
December?
Yeah.
Well, what we can do is bring this forward to the, can we bring this forward to the next meeting to have to begin? Sometimes when you've had committees before, you've progressively adopted names as you've reached out, and then, so we might have to have two additional meetings where you keep bringing the names forward till we fill the board.
Okay.
I can put this under myself, under city manager items.
Do we
next
all
time.
have somebody already, or?
Gonna
If you
say,
have
do we
anyone
want to
this
throw some
evening,
out
we
right
can move
now? I
forward.
think we might have
I thought in this resolution, it said we needed to do it by December to name the people. Is that correct?
You do that, but you.
And have we advertised this so that people could come forward and say, I want to be on the charter revision, or do we just have to,
We appoint them, I believe.
well, we appoint them, but
You-
not,
Well, previously, what's been, the procedure has been is that the council members brought forth names of
okay,
folks.
so you don't.
So
basically
unless you
ask.
would like staff to advertise it, that's at your discretion. But typically, the process has worked as each of you have brought forward names and then continue the discussion on the alternates. You do not have to appoint someone who resides within your district, but you get to bring forward a name as a representative of your district.
Okay.
Amy, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I
No,
wasn't aware.
that's-
I wasn't
yeah,
aware
fair enough. I
that,
just wanna make sure you-
I thought, in other things, we've advertised that we were looking for volunteers
If you
or
would
something.
prefer, we can do that as well. That
No, it probably,
I think if we don't fill it, then that would be a thing,
Yeah.
but if we can't,
I got my name, so I'm all right.
yeah, me too.
I have a name too.
Okay.
So-
Well, then,
Spit
do you
'em out.
mind if we give you some names right now?
Absolutely, that
Amy,
would-
why don't we start with you? District 1,
Barbara Craig.
okay? District 2,
John Jenkins.
District 3,
She's on a cruise.
She's on a cruise.
She's on a
She
cruise?
hasn't said yes.
What kind of
Oh, you don't have a
Oh, I
confirmation.
thought Susanna Cruz was.
I was gonna say, I'm
Who is
throwing.
that?
Yeah.
Who is that?
I'm throwing out names right now that I haven't checked with, so
Oh,
probably
you got
that's
one.
not fair. then.
Yeah.
we could bring it to you could bring those to the next meeting, but we'll start with the appointment. We'll start with. the
I'll tell you
process.
what, I'm just gonna throw out the names of Jackie McCurdy and Dennis Behrens. If you could please check with them.
Yes.
Thank you.
You only get one.
He's
Well, there's
district
alternates too.
He's
so.
district.
That's right, I don't even get any. I don't have a district. I forgot about that.
Oh, that's right.
You
that's
get
right.
one, you get one. Chris Corey.
Who? I'm sorry?
Chris Corey.
Okay.
Heard of him.
Jesse
Mike.
Purden, and possibly for an alternate, Nigel Fullick. If we're giving out 2 names.
Fred?
Well, I'm not prepared to do it tonight, because I asked Arlene, and she said we're not going to do that
Okay,
till
no,
later.
fair enough.
Yeah.
I get it.
But one question I have, though,
Question.
how do we pick, how's the chairman picked? Is
That
it-
was appointed by the mayor.
Mayor. Ooh.
Good,
Oh.
good,
District lists and all.
yeah.
Well, then you only
Well,
get
it's
one
every-
choice.
It's every,
Oh,
You
boy.
only get
every
one
committee.
choice then.
all right.
Yeah, that's
It's every committee.
Yeah. Okay. Fred, do you want to throw out a name or no?
Advise the consent, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Not till I check with the people, I don't want to put a name out.
No, I understand. I
You can go ahead
gotcha.
and say mine,
All right.
Fred.
Didn't bother me a bit. I threw out names, but okay. Fair enough.
So just, so for point of reference, you have identified 7 potential candidates at this time.
And we need 9 names?
Correct.
If Fred hesitates too much longer, I'll give you 2 more names. How's that?
Don't forget about Laura, she's got hers. We got
Oh,
on a-
Laura, I'm
we
sorry.
got
I'm
on a
sorry.
cruise. We got
I'm
on a
sorry,
cruise.
Laura. I forgot about
So,
that.
so upon the next, Councilmember Carr and Councilmember
She
Forbes.
can't go on
Okay,
any
there you go.
cruise
There's
next time
our
this
two.
period,
Then
you
you
know,
would have-
cruises are out
Then
now.
you can determine from there the
Sure.
alternates from there.
And if look, council, if there's more names, right? I mean,
Federal.
right?
alternative.
And
Yes.
alternates, yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And so we'll bring this back next meeting as well. We wanted to begin the introduction of it.
Okay. Great.
My next item, I'll start to the introduction, then I'll hand it off to our assistant city manager. But as you recall, through the LMS process, one of our top priorities is the IBE Dean, Downs, Quinn, and Dean Street areas. They are part of the LMS, but we also identified them as potential community development block grant disaster recovery program opportunities. And so what we need to do is begin some scoping of potential projects that would help us move forward with those grants. Also, we're understanding that the next series of regular cycle FEMA grants, not directly related to Irma, are going to be beginning soon as well. This proposal also includes some modeling that can be utilized for future decision-making in firm maps and flood maps. So we are looking with our city attorney to see what portion of this might be able to be utilized out of the building fund, as it would directly relate to building permits, so we continue that process. I'll let Matt go into further detail on the 2 firms and the scope that he worked with through them.
Thank you, Arlene. Basically, Arlene covered the high points. What we did is I spoke to firms that were on our continuing engineering services agreements, and basically reached out to 3 firms, 2 to look at the actual drainage infrastructure projects, walked through the neighborhoods, showed them the challenges, showed them the flooding that we experienced, and you know what information we had available, and asked them to give me a proposal on developing feasible projects and providing feasibility analysis and developing alternatives for City Council. Those 2 firms were American Structure Point and Stantec. And then I reached out to Grady Minor to talk about actually modeling the river to the hurricane conditions. The modeling, as Arlene pointed out, has value not only for this effort, but also for future things with firms and flood insurance. And in that modeling component, they'll be evaluating up to 5 scenario projects to see what impacts those would have on the Imperial River. Those projects can be within the construct of what these firms come up with, as well as other things that we've identified that are on our LMS listing.
This item also has an addendum item for it, which also includes a budget resolution, which would provide $125,000. There's a smaller remaining amount that we feel confident we'd be able to cover out of the building fund, but we're going to continue to work through that process with the city attorney to see if more of that could be utilized out of the building fund as well. Additionally, at our first meeting in November city council meeting, we will be asking our legislative representatives, Carol Green and Ashley, to be here. One of the proposals we're going to bring forward is allowing us to look at a phased legislative budget request, maybe possibly being phase 1, design and construction, and a dollar amount to be brought forward to you, but maybe looking at that entire legislative ask as a multi-year project, and we would have the match then within some of these items that we're currently doing. We would probably look to the full LMS amount, which is $7.5 million, but then stage that out over several years as the progress continues. We are hearing from our legislative lobbyists that it is good to continue a project that goes on, that continues, and then you can continue the same message each year as we progress the project. But that will be for the November meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion, Amy?
Just a question, in regard to the financing, you're looking into the building fund, but did you say there was another part of this, where would that come from?
So there is an addendum to this, addendum item, separate, but, I think you're moving forward, this first screen sheet, and then there's an addendum item for the budget transfer, which provides $125,000.
Where's it coming from? I don't see that.
It's coming from the capital improvement item for Pine Lake Preserve, which is also an
I
LMS
thought I had
project.
read that. I don't know why,
And-
but that's my question. Is that a problem? Is that a problem because we also have that on our LMS where we need to do matching?
No, we looked at it with the finance director, and we're able to meet the 25% match requirement. And there was some extra dollars in that match, and so that's where the 125
Okay,
comes
so
from. So we
it's
still meet
not,
the.
it's not going to compromise that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counsel, Fred?
Yeah, Matt, on the modeling, before you do these 5 scenarios, will they really validate their models so that?
Part of the modeling is to tie it in. There is some survey work associated with it as well, so that we can recreate the conditions that we experienced during Hurricane Irma. So it will be calibrated to that
Validate,
storm
yes.
and be able to
Good.
make sure that it demonstrates.
Great.
Okay.
My motion was for both items.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on both items? Roll call, please.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corumba,
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons,
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Thank you, Council. Our next item is, we would like authorization to move forward with preparation of a Florida Department of Environmental Protection FDEP grant for fiscal year 2019-2020. This would be a continuation of the project, of the Terry Street project we're working on. This would help us create the spine moving north from Terry Street on Pine Avenue. Previously at workshops, we had identified that we'd want to see where other connections can come to Pine from 041, particularly providing more access to the school and the recreation center. This would be up to $200,000, and if provided, it would be a 50-50 match. The funds would be available in our CIP for our bicycle pedestrian pathways, and I'll let Matt add any further details to that.
No, pretty much this, as Arlene said, this is kind of a spine street. It comes off of, obviously, West Terry, and it has been identified in previous workshops. It is the common denominator between crossing the railroad, providing alternate routes to cross from the west side of Terry Street to the west side of Old 41 to the east side of Old 41. And it would allow either Pauline or Cochran, whichever, in the future became feasible, to cross the railroad and get folks across that way.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Council, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Corumba,
Aye.
Councilman DeWitt,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
We did hold the DPZ workshop here at City Hall. It was well-attended, and we will ask DPZ to be here on October 17th to continue with their recommendations. We've placed the PowerPoint presentation and draft materials on the website. There is some draft conceptual designs that are located on city-owned properties. The DPZ group, they clearly said this is all conceptual, this is the beginning phase, and it was a process to provide some working products so they can continue to receive public comment. We provided comment cards at the meeting. We offered to continue communication to our city clerk through email, and DPZ is also available for any particular properties anyone would like additional information on as we move forward. But they will be coming forward on the 17th. At that time, we can discuss some potential next steps as we move forward in the form-based code process and some potential ideas for the city-owned properties, the Levin and the Bamboo properties as well.
Great. Thank you.
And
Counsel,
folks
anything on
can
that? Yeah.
continue to provide public comment during this time as well.
Okay, great.
Wanted to provide you an update on the Dixie Moon. The building has been, of course, relocated. At our next meeting, we'll be providing with our finance director a budget proposal. The Historic Preservation Board has offered for the consideration of council to recommend that any remaining funds that they did not spend out of their grant funds, They currently had a project with the McSwain House that was finishing up this week to the end of the fiscal year. Any remaining dollars, they are looking to bring forward to see if they could carry that forward and add that to the Dixie Moon project. We're also looking at cost savings that we had acquired during the move. And at that time, we're going to be bringing some potential short-term proposals of bringing back in the doors, the windows, probably putting some boards to the bottom and looking at some paint so that we can secure the building. During the budget retreat, a Public Works Department's working on a long-range plan, which would be further out in funding as uses are decided for the building, and what is necessary, whether it be flood-proofing or next steps that have to be taken in further fiscal years.
And I'd just like to go on the record and say there's been some media about the Dixie Moon that I feel is in very poor taste, just because 7 days after we moved the building, we couldn't meet a 2 o'clock deadline. We didn't have bushes planted. We didn't have the building repainted 7 days after we moved it. We didn't have it framed in. We didn't have benches there and waterfalls. I apologize that maybe, I understand in the professional world you have deadlines, but I also know that there's bounds of decency. I know that there's bounds of maybe you can move on to the next story. The building has been there over 100 years, and because the complete plan is not framed A to Z of what the next steps are. We know what our next steps are, but to lay out a blueprint for the media is, I feel, who's wagging the dog here, right? The dog or the tail? So I just want to go on the record and saying I think that story was in very poor taste. Laura, I think you handled it amazingly well, as did Arlene and others. And I hate to say it, but when you come after Bonita Springs, I'm going to come back. So there. So thank you very much for how you handled that.
We also wanted to announce the Coastal Cleanup Day is October 13th from 9 a.m. to noon at Lovers Key Event Field. And we'll continue to provide updates as well through that process. And I did want to make one other announcement. We do know that our own formerly Lieutenant Brian Prespolowski is now Captain Brian Prespolowski. And although I've worked together with him since I started with the city in 2005, when he was a deputy, then which moved to sergeant, then our lieutenant. He unfortunately is no longer going to be with us as our community policing lieutenant. Lieutenant Boglioli, affectionately known as Boggs, will be our new community policing lieutenant. But at some point, with the mayor's blessing, we'll bring forward a proper recognition
Absolutely.
for Captain Prespolowski as well. But I think his last day as our community policing lieutenant, or now captain, is tomorrow.
Great. Thank you. And I guess congratulations. He's not. Yeah, where are they? Wonderful. Anything else?
I think that's all I have for this evening.
Great. Matt?
No, that's it.
Okay. Dynamite. Thank you very much. Okay, mayor and council member items. Amy?
None.
Okay. Greg?
I'm just going to steal a little bit of your thunder, Mayor. I'd just like to thank you and applaud you for what you did on Friday. And I'll let you continue on with that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot to me.
Laura?
Well, I ditto. But I actually do everything you do.
Well.
I do. I'm sorry.
You know, that's.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No, I'm just.
Don't roll your eyes at me.
Oh, no, I was rolling my eyes at you. You and Suzanne need to talk. Yeah, right. No, but,
Oh, no.
no, I appreciate it. Thank you. It was for a dynamite cause. Thank you very much, Laura. Pete?
I was actually looking at my paper. We got some good news on the quadrant plan. Secretary Nandum talked to me at after the NPO meeting and some phone calls back and forth with Arlene and Matt. They're going to have some preliminary concepts for us early next year, which is really nice. So this is advancing consistent with the understanding that we had at the time, which is pretty nice. We are going to advance some money consistent with what we talked about then toward their work. It fits into their funding of their work schedule, and it puts them in a position to be working with us. So that's basically the story, and more to come on that.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Mike?
I just also wanted to say thank you for, what you did the other day, Peter. I was expecting you to be completely bald, so I mean, when I first saw the
you're
pictures, I was like, that's
disappointed?
not bald.
Should I go back?
Yeah. But besides that, I just want to say congratulations to Prez, and welcome back to Boggs. And I don't know if I missed it, but on here it was to save the date for the coastal cleanup. I don't know if you mentioned that, but October 13th, 9 a.m. to noon at Lover's Key. I missed it if I didn't hear it, but that's it.
Great. Fred?
Yeah, I want to compliment the mayor too on his close shave. And I agree with some of the comments on the Dixie Moon. Dixie Moon is complicated. It's going to take a while. It's going to take money. And we all know we're kind of short on money. And I want to compliment both Matt and Arlene on coming up with this way of using some other funds to help do some things we need to do that otherwise we couldn't do. So that's it.
Thank you very much. And I can assure you once again, the building has not been abandoned for anybody that wants to print that. It has not been abandoned. And give us more than 7 days. Trust me, we'll get it figured out, okay? And Tad, that's not for you, buddy. That's not for you at all. Look, you see my head, but I can, for the record, I think I'll stand up and show. It's all there. There are no bald spots, even though it looks like you can see the skin. But we last Friday, and Councilman DeWitt was there as well, and a whole room of others. There, the Golisano Children's Hospital, and I know we've all heard of it and probably have a pretty good idea with what they do. There was a little girl. There's several little girls, unfortunately, in there. The numbers right now are about, I think it's either 83 or 87% of children with cancer they are able to help and to cure. And roughly about 17% they're not able to. So it started as the CEO of Golisano saying, gosh, what can I do for this little girl? Just to let her know I love her, other than say it. She's got a bald head. So that's where it came. And then it turned into, okay, maybe there was 3 or 5 within the office. And they decided to do it. So then they said, all right, you know what? Let's do some outreach. So they called a few times, and I said, you know what? Absolutely, I'd be happy to get involved. And so it was a very casual event, Greg, but a very moving event. At the same time. What it lacked in formality, and there, I mean, you had Patrick Nolan from Fox 4 there, and you had several others. The exposure and the money that we were able to raise is just priceless for these children, and it really does. It's hard not to get choked up, and I certainly was choked up there that day. But to see in their eyes that, it's not that adults care, but I don't know that, and we put on superhero socks because they were dressed up as superheroes, and it absolutely breaks your heart to see what's going on there. But it also enlightens your heart because you see how many people care and you see the exposure. And Laura, thank you for getting this out. And I see people at Friday night. We all know or go to our son's football games up at school, and people that I barely know but have seen it on the news or have seen it and in the community, they're donating. I mean, they absolutely are donating. So put up with me for a few more weeks, and but it was for an amazing cause, and thank you, Laura and Arlene and everybody for helping us give this some legs and some exposure for Bonita Springs in Southwest Florida. Greg?
I just want to add to it, and Peter did a great job up there, and it was a lovely thing. And one of the things that was said, I think that needs to be said, is the girl that shaved the CEO's head, and it was very moving to me, was that he explained that 4 or 5 weeks ago, she couldn't even move her hands to do this. She had been training with her physical therapist for 4 weeks so she could do this in front of everybody. And it just shows the determination that these children have. to do things. So it was very moving.
Right, no, thanks for being there, and thank you, everybody, for the support.
Well, and I do want to just point out, it was Laura Teller. I love piggybacking off of everybody thinking Laura is me, but Laura Teller.
Oh, yeah.
You know, our
Right.
communications director.
Lora. Right.
And next time, call me. I'm there.
Would you have shaved your head?
Absolutely.
Wow, okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
That's why Nicholas didn't tell me about it.
Yeah. Dynamite.
I
Well,
know
thank.
I can't carry the look, but hey.
I'm
there next
no,
year.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We'll absolutely keep that in mind. And I want to compliment our good friend, Mayor Kevin Ruane. I mean, we all know him, and we have a pretty good idea what he's up to. And I don't completely know everything that he's up to because I know how hard he's working, and there's things that I'm missing. So there again, to Laura and Arlene and Matt, thank you for working so closely with Sanibel and all the mayors in Southwest Florida. Honestly, I'd like to give a standing ovation, which I won't, but I'm just saying I'm there with Kevin Ruane. He is, literally, no pun intended, he is carrying the water on this to a level that, honestly, I don't remember seeing it. I think in the past, unfortunately, it never was this serious, so it didn't have to be taken to this level. But his gubernatorial appointment and recognition, and at the Florida League of Mayors, he is our incoming president. I know he was in Orlando last week with the incoming Speaker of the House and the Senate President. I mean, it is on and on and on and on and on. And if you want to talk about, the drip method, the slow drip method, well, the slow drip method is now a statewide initiative and a national initiative. Aaron Bronkovich was here today. I think some of you saw that. We're in this together in council. I cannot thank you enough for your support and letting me sign letters that I'm not even authorized to sign just on the, and then, you know what, that brought up a point. We had said that at one point, do we want to mention like this type of letter? And I know we could dissect it further, but when it's time sensitive and we don't have a council meeting, did we want to mention that? Because I know some cities will just let them, how's that handled, Arlene?
Well, I think you had a discussion with Mayor Ruane about, because of the specific nature of this and how he's been following it, that depending on if it was specifically related to these issues, he was authorized to sort of move forward and then ratify those decisions by the council.
At the next, just the way we're doing it?
Just the way we're doing it,
Perfect.
correct.
Okay,
Yes, and
great.
so that was, the letter was based on previous discussion that was already had by council, so we were able to move forward. When it comes to a decision that might obligate the city financially, that does need to come before the council first and not in a ratified type manner.
No, absolutely. Fred?
Well, two things. Number one, aren't we still under those emergency things?
State emergency.
Right, and do I need to
So-
sign something again for that?
You will this evening, and so just to clarify, the September 17th.
Because those are every 7 days.
Correct. So there was a lapse in between. The September 17th occurred and was for 7 days. So the one you approved this evening that's already been on the agenda is actually a new one. But if you can see in the green sheet, it said out of an abundance of caution, we'll continue to renew these every 7 days.
Right.
Now, the last question I have, I think that emergency thing that we're in, that business owners that are adversely affected by the red tide, there is some mechanism where they can apply for a loan or something to, or do we have it set up so somebody that wants to know about it has got information available?
We are providing links to the processes that are being worked through the state and Lee County Department. We're following all the links that are available to us as well and having that information.
So who, if somebody has a problem, who do they call? Do they call you, Matt?
If they call City Hall, they should ask for Laura Taylor, and she will
Okay.
get them to the correct person.
And then I guess maybe I'll go one, and that's a good point, Fred. I'll go one step further. Is this something we would want to send out as a public service announcement to our email list? Or is that inviting, and,
Well, we are not the.
be it for me to ever worry about creating a problem in a good way?
Sure. Well, we can look at making sure that we're providing the correct links to the proper agencies that are providing those funding. The city would not be involved in the decision-making of that
Right.
process, but we certainly can provide communication on how to access the correct information to the correct agency.
I think Lee County said something out, maybe we
Yes.
can mimic that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Could we send something out? Does anybody have a problem with that?
I think
Right.
Laura.
Laura, do you have a problem with
Didn't
that?
you mention it in your last communication, or I thought you sent something out already?
I'm just kind of wondering, just a standalone,
Oh.
Laura
Red
Taylor,
Tide.
Director of Communications. We have shared it on our social media. They had put together a public service announcement, the Lee County Economic Development. So we did share that on our social media. We do have links on our website, and we could send out an e-blast if you'd like us to.
I'd like to send out an e-blast. Is that okay with council?
Yeah.
Okay, dynamite. Thank you, Laura. Dedicated just to that, in other words. Thank you so much. Okay, you had touched base on the legislative process. Do we have an update? Because I know I've kind of asked a couple of times about meetings all
Yes.
over the state if needed.
So,
And I know you met with them recently,
Carol,
so.
we did meet, also additionally, we met on, the city council had asked us to talk with BSU and Carol Green about the process of the septic tank conversion process. We had some very preliminary conversations with BSU. They're bringing some information back to their board, and we're looking at specific locations that would, if we look for it as, it would be a second level of legislative request. And also, we would be looking at where it's increasing water quality issues. That would be the criteria we'd be looking for if we move forward. So we are asking Carol and Ashley to be here at our first meeting in November with an update on how things are moving. That also gets what Carol suggested. That's an opportunity where some decisions would be made at the state level. So we'll know a little bit more what to expect and where priorities might be.
Okay.
So she can give us more guidance on where folks are in position and what are their priorities, so we'll know better. But in the one of the things we did talk about is creating one consistent message that we carry through year for year. And if the council would like to move forward with that Downs Imperial type project laid out in several stages, that's something that could be discussed every single year with the same message, which helps, as many other local jurisdictions have long-range projects that receive a portion of funding each year as the project goes on in phases.
Right, no, that's great. And I want to publicly acknowledge Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott for all his years of service. I know, yes, I mean, I know that Greg was there. I'm not sure it was so many people that I saw you. I was, just sitting down, behaving. But it was just such a moving ceremony. Governor Scott was there as well. And just to welcome in a man like Carmine Marcino as the new sheriff, look, Mike Scott's a legend. I mean, his family has been here. I'm not sure how long. I know before air conditioning, that I know, because I have spoken with Mike's mother about that. And what he's done for Lee County with good old-fashioned hard work and good old-fashioned common sense is remarkable. And I wish Carmine all the very best. He's up and going already. I saw that he busted a drug house or a drug ring already, and things are fast forward. And he and I have a joke. I mean, literally, they are a 24/7 operation, but they also just kind of do more than that, if that's even possible. So my joke with Carmine, when you see him, if you want, we say you go beyond 24/7, it's actually 25/8. And that really encapsulates what the Lee County Sheriff's Office does. And Mike, we love you. Congratulations with your decision. We stand by you in your decision. And Carmine, welcome, and we look forward to working with you for years to come. So thank you very much. Those are my remarks. Those are my comments. Council, do you have anything else? Okay, Laura?
Ditto, no.
Yeah, ditto. All right.
I did forget to say welcome to Derek. Welcome to the family.
Welcome to Derek.
Okay.
And Derek Rooney.
Love
Rooney.
Derek and the Dominoes, do you need
No.
a nickname or anything? Or?
No nicknames and no relation to any of the other Roonies in the area.
Derek works?
Yeah. I'm almost finished writing up the petition to intervene. So I've been doing that while we've been talking, so.
Okay, great. Yeah, obviously, welcome very much. Okay, motion to approve the minutes of September 17th.
Second.
Okay, so moved in a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Public comment?
Oh,
I'm sorry, no, did you?
no, I just.
Public comment.
Public comments coming up. I wanted to catch up with you after.
Kathy McGrath, I forgot before to tell you that we weren't the only place that has red tide. I just came back from 2 weeks in Panama City Beach, and I arrived there on the 15th, and I opened the car door to a horrible smell, and you couldn't breathe. And they did a that's pristine white sand up there. They did a beautiful job keeping the beaches clean and clear, but the people just weren't there. They were, it's the emptiest I've seen it in 30 years, and all the businesses were suffering, but it did improve, so. And I'm glad you said I was gone and I missed sending anything to Mike Scott, but he has been wonderful. And he did the right thing. Family comes first. We all know that. So, and let's face it, our community policing here, we keep seeing, they keep getting promoted, but they're wonderful. And I guess the other thing was everyone's cheering on their team, so I might as well cheer mine on. Go Dolphins.
How'd they look Sunday?
Huh? Thanks.
That's
Thanks,
me.
Laura,
That's
for
me.
laughing.
That's me.
Anyway, I just figured.
The
I'd-
baton is not quite ready to be passed yet, but
Well, they're working on it.
I know. Thanks, Kathy.
Or so you hope.
Welcome. Hi, Jim.
Okay, Mary Simmons, I figured I'd come up here real quick. I want to say thank you for rescuing this Dixie Moon Cafe. I was approached by such reporter to give negative comments about it, and I said, no way.
Yeah.
We did a good job. It's well supported. If a hurricane came through, we know what to do to take care of it.
Right.
We're in this new home, and we'll get it taken care of. So
Right.
thank you for rescuing it.
No, no, absolutely. Thank you, Jim. Other members of the public? Okay, seeing none, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thanks, council. Thanks, everybody.